Good morning, students. Welcome you all once again in the second lecture of India's 116. Students, we have
Good
started
morning,
this
students.
India's
Welcome you all
116
once
in the
again
last
in the
class,
second lecture of India's
and we will
116.
cover this standard in total
Students,
5
we have
classes.
Good morning,
This
students.
India's
Welcome you all
116
once
in the
again
last
in the
class
second.
of India's 116. And again, I'm reiterating this Ind AS 116 leases is very important for becoming a chartered accountant and after becoming a chartered accountant, right? So this standard is not only limited to acquiring a knowledge for passing a CA final examination. This standard is equally important to crack an interview. This standard is equally important to work in a practical world, in a real life. This standard is equally important, right? Students, in the next 10 minutes, I will revise what we have understood in the first class, and then I'll move to the next concepts, okay? Students, we have understood that in the first class that this Ind AS 116 is the converged standard, is the converged IFRS of IFRS 16, right? So in IFRS, we have IFRS 16. In Ind AS, we have Ind AS 116, right? And in accounting standard, we have accounting standard 19, leases, okay? Friends, this Ind AS 116 is substantially, significantly different from AS 19, largely with respect to lessee accounting. Okay. For lessor accounting, Ind AS 116 is not much change in comparison to our old accounting standard. But if I talk about lessee accounting, the lessee accounting has entirely changed in Ind AS 116, right? And why this Ind AS 116 came, we have discussed in detail in the last class, right? So this Ind AS 116 eliminate the biasness, or this Ind AS 116 eliminate the deficiencies in the earlier standard of leases, which was Ind AS 17. Okay. So in Ind AS 116, there is a single lease model. There is no classification of operating lease and finance lease from the lessee perspective. Okay. So this is what we discussed. So in case of Ind AS 116, the lessee is required to capitalize right of use assets and credit lease liability in the books of accounts. This is what we have also seen in the last class. Friends, we have also seen that in the old Ind AS or in the old accounting standard, whenever a lessee enters into a lease, lessee has to classify it as an operating lease or as a finance lease. If it is an operating lease, lessee has to accrue the rent expense in the P&L and credit the bank account. If it is a finance lease, in that case, lessee has to recognize the finance lease asset, credit the finance lease liability. Lessee has to depreciate the finance lease asset, and lessee has to also debit interest cost on the finance lease liability. Right? Friends, in Ind AS 116, there is no classification between operating lease and finance lease. Every lease is a lease. Okay. So the accounting in Ind AS 116 is largely equivalent to finance lease accounting. Means in Ind AS 116, lessee is required to capitalize right of use asset. Right. So the name is right of use asset, not finance lease asset. Why? Because in Ind AS 116, there is no classification between operating and finance. Every lease is a lease. Okay. And hence, if a lessee has entered into a lease agreement, lessee has to capitalize right of use asset and credit lease liability. And friends, lessee has to charge depreciation and interest cost, okay, in the P&L. So friends, in Ind AS 116, there is no rent expense in the P&L. In Ind AS 116, everything goes to depreciation or interest cost. Okay, there is no rent expense in the P&L. You will not find any rent expense. You will only find your depreciation and interest cost. So EBITDA has significantly improved for the companies like aviation companies, airline companies, telecom tower companies like Indus Towers. So EBITDA has significantly improved for those company which has a dominance of leases in their books of accounts. Okay. So this was the basic, this was the fundamental which we have discussed, friends. Then the first concept we have discussed is a lease contract. What is meant by lease contract under IND AS 116? We discussed that an agreement is considered to be a lease agreement, a lease contract under IND AS 116 when 4 conditions should be satisfied. Condition number 1, there must be a transfer of right to control the use of identified asset, right, for a specified period of time in exchange for a consideration. So we need to understand 4 aspects. Number 1, identified asset. What is meant by identified asset? In our old IND AS or in our old accounting standard, the concept is only asset. But in IND AS 116 or IFRS 16, the concept is identified asset. So we need to understand what is identified asset. Then the concept is right to control the use. Okay. The transfer of not right to use, the transfer of right to control the use. Transfer of right to control the use. Then a specified period of time. Okay. Lease term. We need to understand what is meant by lease term. Why? Because your right of use asset and lease liability is depending on the lease term. The higher the lease term, ROU lease liability will be higher. Lower the lease term, it will be lower. And the fourth one is consideration, which is a lease payment. Consideration. Okay. Which we are going to discuss in today's class. Friends, what is the identified asset? We have discussed that identified asset. An asset is considered to be identified asset if it is explicitly or implicitly mentioned in the contract, right? The asset will not be considered as an identified asset if the lessor will have the substantive substitution right. Means substantive means exercisable. Okay. Substitution right means right to replace. If the lessor has a right, to replace the asset, in that case, this asset will not be considered as an identified asset. Provided if the lessor has a right to replace the asset and lessor is also getting a benefit by replacing the asset, in that case, it will not be considered as an identified asset. Sir, if lessor is replacing the asset, right? For example, if the lessor has given a car on a lease basis and lessor is replacing the car for the purpose of service, in case the car got damaged, in case the car met with the accident, in that case, lessor is not getting any economic benefit by replacing the car. So these rights will be considered as a protective rights. Okay. So we understood the meaning of identified asset and we discussed with a lot of examples. Then friends, what is meant by right to control the use? So the right to control the use should be with the lessee. Okay. Friends, it will be considered that there is a transfer of right to control the use if 2 conditions should be satisfied. Condition number 1, the benefits from the use of the asset should lie with the lessee. You remember we have done one illustration relating to MNO and PQR, that solar power plant, where the lessor is getting a benefit of the ownership of the asset and lessee is getting a benefit, some credits, solar renewable credits by using the asset. You remember that example we have done from ICAI study material. So friends, condition number 1, the benefits from use of the asset should lie with the lessee, substantially should lie with the lessee. Condition number 2, the decision about using the asset, how to use and for what purpose the asset will be used, it should be lies with the lessee, right? If these 2 conditions will be satisfied, it will be considered that there is a transfer of right to control the use of an asset. Sir, if the asset is not an identified asset or there is no any right to control the use of asset, while right to use is there, but right to control the use nahi hai, right? For example, my daughter is asking a mobile from me, right? Whenever I come from office, she's asking a mobile phone, my mobile phone. I am giving her mobile phone, but with lot of instructions. Okay. I'm telling her that you cannot use this mobile phone for more than half an hour. Okay. And you have to see, like on the YouTube, you have to see the, academic kind of a channels. So I'm giving a lot of instructions to her. Okay. So I'm telling her that please do the zoom screen, full screen, see the mobile phone on the full screen. and make the that mobile phone light at a average position. So I am giving her a lot of instructions while she is getting a right to use, but she is not getting a decision about how to use the asset, right? So who is controlling the use? I am controlling the use. I am telling her how to use. I am telling her for what purpose it is getting used, for what purpose it has to be used, right? So friends, if there is no identified asset, or there is no right to control the use of asset, in that case, that lease agreement, that lease contract will not be covered as a lease contract under Ind AS 116. Sir, in that case, what will happen? In that case, if it is not a lease contract, that right of use asset and lease liability accounting will not follow. In that case, you have to apply that rent expense account debit to bank account. You remember, I've taken an example of airline company who are getting a space in the airports, right? And where the airport authority has a substantive right to replace the asset, right? In that case, the airport authorities are not creating, airline companies are not creating right of use asset. They are recognizing the rent expense. Correct? These two aspects we have discussed at length. Friends, then we discuss the lease term, because you need to understand the lease term. Once you have decided, okay, it is an identified asset and the lessee is getting a right to control the use of an identified asset. But what is a lease term? Because we have to create right of use asset and lease liability on the basis of present value of lease payments. Present value of lease payments, time value of money. But for how many years you need to decide the lease term? And then we discussed lease term is equal to non-cancelable period, lock-in period. You understand lock-in period? Yeah. जैसे आप इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी लेते हैं तो उसमें लॉक इन पीरियड होता है कि आप 2 साल तक पैसा नहीं निकाल सकते. दैट इज अ लॉक इन पीरियड. So likewise, non-cancelable period is a lock-in period. Okay. Plus rent-free period, RFP, rent-free period. Like in case of malls, you must have seen a lot of branded showrooms, outlets are there in the mall, right? So normally what happened? So these lessors, the mall authority is giving the fit out period, rent-free period, so that they can do the fit out, they can do the renovation, and they can start earning from their showrooms. Okay. So non-cancelable period plus rent-free period plus optional renewal period if the lessee is reasonably certain that lessee is going to avail the renewal option, plus optional termination period if lessee is reasonably certain not to exercise the termination option, right? So this is the meaning of lease term. Friends, in case of a termination option, you need to see who is holding the termination option. If the termination option lies with lessor and lessee, both the parties, in that case, the optional termination period will not be considered for the assessment of lease term. If the termination option lies with the lessee, in that case, you need to check whether lessee is reasonably certain not to exercise the termination option. If the termination option only lies with the lessor, not lies with the lessee, तो क्या करेंगे? Termination option is only lying with the lessor. Lessee के पास तो है ही नहीं termination option. Then what to do? Then full period is a lease term. The optional termination period is not lying with the lessee. आपको कोई reasonable certainty देखनी नहीं है. Correct? Why? Because the option is not lying with the lessee. Correct? Correct? So friends, this is what we have covered in the first class. We discussed identified asset, we discussed right to control the use of an asset, and we discussed the lease term. Okay, these were the 3 major concepts which we have covered in the last class, along with the background of the standard, basic or aerial view of the standard. This is what we have discussed. Okay, I believe you guys are able to recap or revise in the last 10-15 minutes. I hope you found this last 15 minutes useful. Yes or no? Crystal clear? Okay. Great. Yeah, so once again, a very good morning, everyone. As a protocol, I'm again Wishing you good morning, and I'm going to start today's agenda. So let me recall the name of my students. Good morning, Anila, Anu, Tushar, DP, Hemant, Mamta, Niranjan, Nisha, Ginny, Pooja, Stephen, Usha, and Vignesh. Good morning, everyone. So one of the student was asking me in the last class, sir, is it important to learn accounting standard 19 before learning Ind AS 116? Not important, not required at all, right? I'm just taking a reference so that you guys will be able to understand the difference between these two standard also, right? And I'm not teaching you from AS 19. I'm teaching you completely in AS 116, okay? With theory, with examples, with illustrations, okay? So even though if you are not aware about accounting standard 19, you are not able to remember accounting standard 19, still you will be able to understand 100% of Ind AS 116, okay? Right, Vignesh? I believe you have asked that question in the last class. Pooja is saying that she is not able to unmute herself. So students, can you please try if you are able to unmute yourself? Anyone who can try? Anila, are you able to unmute yourself? Mr. Ayaz, can you please check? The students are not able to unmute themselves. आयाज जी एक बार आप चेक करो, स्टूडेंट्स अनम्यूट नहीं कर पा रहे हैं अपने आप को. अजीत जी, आर यू देयर? Okay, so they will do in some time. No, not a problem. Okay, friends, let's go to the today's agenda. Not to worry. Student, after understanding, and also we have covered the inception of the lease and commencement of the lease concept. Commencement of the lease, inception of the lease is a date when the terms and conditions have been agreed between the parties, or agreement has been entered between the parties. Commencement date of the lease is a lease when the physical transfer of the asset happens, or when the execution of the lease happens. This commencement date is a date when the accounting entries are getting started to be entered in the books of accounts, right? Friends, now, as I told you that under a lease term, okay, there are four things. Number one, non-cancelable period, which is always kind of a fixed. Rent-free period, which is always a kind of a fixed period. Plus, optional renewal period and optional termination period, right? So whether you need to consider optional renewal period and optional termination period, it depends on your judgment and estimates, right? You are estimating or you're applying some judgment whether you are going to avail optional renewal period or not, whether you are going to avail termination period or not, right? So friends, standard says that at every reporting date, right, the after the lease commencement, right, once you have commenced the lease and in the beginning of the lease, you have also considered optional renewal period because you have done a huge amount of lease improvements. So you are reasonably certain that I'm going to avail the renewal option, right? But standard says that the lessees are required to monitor the leases for significant changes that could trigger a change in the lease term, okay? Lessees are required to reassess the lease term upon the occurrence of either a significant event or a significant change in the circumstances that is within the control of the lessee, and it affects whether the lessee is reasonably certain to exercise or not to exercise the renewal, termination, etc., options, etc. Friends, for example, And the classic example was COVID. Okay. I was working in HSBC Bank in 2014-15. So this HSBC Bank has a big building, has a big office, of course, on a lease basis, right? And they have an agreement of close to 5 to 6 years. So they are paying rent. They have an office near Unitech Cyber Park in Gurgaon. What happened? So their rental was significantly high. But when they have entered into the agreement, the rental at all the places were high. Okay. So the agreement was 5 years. The renewal period was 5 years. So when HSBC Bank has entered into the agreement with the lessor, they were reasonably certain that they are going to avail the renewal option also. And they have considered that lease term is for 10 years, right? Now, when this COVID came, okay, and the rental will become significantly lower, okay, and this company has also started work from home. So now they need a lower kind of a space. Now they are getting a lot of premises, which is on a very minimum or which is on a very less expensive rental basis. Okay. Friends, in that case, what happened? So this event, this significant event has triggered that HSBC will now move to the some different premises. HSBC is not going to avail the renewal option. Why? Because of two situations. Number one, HSBC will need a smaller space in comparison to the existing space. Number two, HSBC is getting some good premises at a cheaper rental. Okay. So friends, the circumstances have significantly changed. And the moment when at the inception, when the HSBC Bank was thinking that I'm going to avail the renewal option now, it is not reasonably certain that the HSBC will avail the renewal option, right, friends? So standard says that since this optional renewal period or optional termination period is a matter of significant judgment and estimates, so you are required to reassess your optionality. You are required to reassess your optional termination period and optional renewal period in case whenever there is a significant event or there is a significant change in circumstances. Okay. So this is what standard says. And your lease term will be revised when if the lessee exercises an option. So now you are thinking that, oh, lessee will exercise an option not previously included in the entity's determination of the lease term. Initially, at the commencement date, the lessee has not included the optional renewal period, but due to the change in circumstances, now the lessee is reasonably certain that he is going to avail the renewal option, or the lessee does not exercise an option which was included previously, like in a case of HSBC Bank example. Previously, the lessee has included the renewal option, but now lessee is reasonably not certain to avail the renewal option. Or an event occurs that contractually obliges the lessee to exercise an option not previously included in the entity's determination of the lease term. Okay. For example, there is an event which occurred which contractually obliges the lessee to exercise an option. For example, the lessor and lessee has entered into an agreement for a 5-year lease period. Okay. And there is a subsequent renewal period of 3 years. Right. The lessee has told that, after 1 year, you need to tell me whether you are going to avail the optional renewal period or not. You need to tell me. Okay. After 1 year, you need to tell me. And if you will not tell me after 1 year, so I will give you a grace period of 15 days. And if that 15 days will expire, there is a rebuttable presumption. It will be assumed and considered that you have already availed that renewal option, right? So it is written in the contract. Friends, so in this case, in the contract it was written that the lessee is required to tell to the lessor after 1 year that he is going to avail the renewal option. But after 1 year, the lessee didn't tell anything, right? So in that case, it will be considered that the lessee is going to avail the renewal option. So the event occurs which contractually obliges the lessee to avail the renewal option. At the inception date, lessee was not clear that he is going to avail the renewal option. But when this event occurred, so the lessee has to take that renewal period into the consideration of the lease term, or vice versa. An event occurs which contractually prohibit the lessee from exercising an option. So friends, आपने पहले कंसिडर किया, अब आपको रीअसेस करना है कि कंसिडर करेंगे या नहीं करेंगे ड्यू टू चेंज इन द सर्कमस्टांसेस. So since the lease term is a subjective in nature, except non-cancelable period and rent-free period, since you have taken some judgment and estimate, you have to reassess, you have to monitor whether you are going to avail or you are going to exercise or you are not going to exercise. Okay, these options, right? Friends, let's discuss illustration number 17 for reassessment of exercise of lease extension option. Okay. Retailer M enters into a 5-year lease for a building floor, followed by 2 successive 5-year renewal option. The initial term was 5 years, followed by 2 successive 5-year renewal option, plus 5 plus 5. On the commencement date, retailer M is not reasonably certain to exercise the extension options. At the end of the 3rd year, retailer M extended to include another floor from year 4 due to a business acquisition. Okay. So at the end of the 3rd year, 3 साल के बाद, 3 साल के end में, retailer M extended this lease agreement to include another floor from year 4 due to business acquisition. Okay. For this purpose, the lessee concludes a separate 7-year lease. For this purpose, the lessee concludes a separate 7-year lease for an additional floor in the building already leased. पहले सिंगल फ्लोर था, एक फ्लोर और ले लिया ईयर 4 से 7 ईयर की लीज पे. ओके. एंड जो पहला फ्लोर है उसकी लीज फर्स्ट 5 ईयर में, उसकी लीज का पीरियड कितना है? 5 ईयर. सो द इनिशियल पीरियड ऑफ द फर्स्ट फ्लोर वाज 5 ईयर. ओके. एंड द पीरियड फॉर द सेकेंड फ्लोर इज 7 ईयर. 7 ईयर फ्रॉम विच डेट? फ्रॉम द एंड ऑफ द 3rd year. It means if I'm talking from the day 0, it means the lessee is taking this second floor up to 10 years. Up to 10 years, right? So don't you think if the lessee is taking another floor, might be due to business expansion, okay? So don't you think the lessee will also avail the renewal option at least equivalent to the lease completion of this second floor?
Yes, sir.
Are you getting me what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. He
Yes,
will
sir.
take the renewal option.
Yeah.
As he is extending his business activities in the same building, so it is there are more chances that he will continue with us.
Very good. Very good. So since he has taken the additional space in the same building, it means he is thinking about business expansion, and now he is also taken this second floor for a period of 7 years. Okay. So it means there are high chances that the lessee is going to avail the renewal option, right? So this is a situation, this is a circumstances where lessee is required to reassess. Earlier lessee was not reasonably certain, but now lessee has to reassess whether there is a change in lease term or not, whether the lessee is going to renew or not. So friends, Ind AS 116 requires a lessee to reassess the lease term if there is a change in the business decision of the company which is directly relevant to exercising or not exercising an option to renew or extend the lease. In the given case, retailer M at the end of the 3rd year has extended to include another floor in the same building on account of acquiring another company. As retailer M has entered into fresh lease of another floor for a 7-year term, it is reasonably certain to exercise the renewal option of original lease for a further 5-year term. Further 5-year term is equivalent to the 7-year term of the second lease. Hence, retailer M will have to reassess the lease term at the end of the 3rd year. Right? Have you understood this illustration?
Yes,
Friends, how the question will come into the examination. When you get a question in the exam, the question will not cover only this part. This is one of the part of the bigger question, right? Where lease rental has to be given, right? Where the lease rental has to be given, where the non-cancelable period has to be given, where, this optional renewal has to be given. And there, this paragraph will be given. That after 3 years, this is the development. The optional renewal period was not considered earlier. So what is the lease term? What are the impacts? So friends, whenever this lease term will change from at the end of the 3rd year, earlier you were assessing that at the end of the 3rd year, only 2-year remaining lease is there, right? For the original lease, at the end of the 3rd year, what was the remaining period in case of original lease?
2 years.
2 years. But now with this development, what is the remaining period?
7 years.
7 years. So, but at the commencement date, when we have done all the calculation, when we have put the accounting entry, when we have debited the right of use asset, credit the lease liability, what was the period we have considered?
5 years.
5 years. It means we have considered the rental for the 5 years, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. But now what we are required to do? Now we have to consider another 5 years. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So it means there is a modification. It means there is a remeasurement. It means your right of use asset and lease liability number will get changed. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. It means you have to do the modification accounting. Sir, वो कैसे होगी? That is one of the complex accounting. Sir, वो कैसे होगी? वो तब होगी जब पहले हम सीखेंगे इनिशियल रिकॉग्निशन, तब सीखेंगे सब्सिक्वेंट मेजरमेंट, इनिशियल मेजरमेंट के बाद सब्सिक्वेंट मेजरमेंट, राइट? सो वी आर getting bigger. We are becoming more matured by moving from one concept to another, right? तो ये कॉन्सेप्ट दिया हुआ है. सो स्टडी मटेरियल में इस कॉन्सेप्ट का एक इलस्ट्रेशन दिया हुआ है, बट एग्जाम में आपके एक क्वेश्चन का ये पार्ट होगा, राइट? अंडरस्टूड? ओके, ग्रेट. सो फ्रेंड्स, just give me a minute. Okay. Illustration number 18. Company N took 10 vehicles on lease for an initial period of 5 years with an extension option at the option of the lessee. Extension option means renewal option. At the option of the lessee for a further period of 5 years at the same rental amount. I'm reading this question like a student. Just watch me patiently. Company N has taken, okay, Company N is the lessee, 10 vehicles, identified asset, 10 vehicles on lease for an initial period of 5 years, 5-year lease term with optional renewal period of 5 years at the same rental amount. The remaining useful life of the vehicle as on the commencement date of the lease is 15 years. Okay. So lessee has taken up these vehicles for 5 years, while the life is 15 years. And lessee has taken this vehicle for initial 5-year period plus renewal period of 5 years. Okay. Company N has determined at the commencement date that it is reasonably certain to exercise the extension option, and hence it has taken a period of 10 years for the lease. So at the commencement date, this lessee has taken a lease term of 10 years, initial period plus optional renewal period, because lessee was reasonably certain to avail the optional renewal period. At the end of 4th year, there is an announcement by government that all the cars of this particular model have to be discontinued from the road within 1 year due to the change in pollution norms in the country. BS4 vehicle, BS6 vehicle. Have you heard about BS4, BS6 vehicles? Will the lease term be reassessed in this case? Right? क्या करेंगे? Reassess करेंगे या नहीं करेंगे? Stephen, will we reassess or will we not reassess?
We will reassess, sir.
Stephen, what is your view? Ginny?
No, sir.
No? Stephen, will you reassess or not reassess? Ginny, what is your view?
Sir, in this case, we will reassess our contract as government has given discontinued to
Right. This kind of a vehicle, right? This model of vehicle. You are right. It is crystal clear given in the question that government has already announced that these vehicles are not roadworthy after 1 year. Okay. So
Yes.
of course, our initial period was 5 years. Optional renewal period is going to 5 years. So no one will avail the renewal option. कोई भी नहीं करेगा ना, जब पता ही है कि ये मॉडल चलना ही नहीं है. Right. So why somebody will extend this lease? So given the chance that now you have an option whether you can renew or you cannot renew, of course you will not renew. So earlier it was reasonably certain, but with this development, it becomes certain to not to exercise the renewal option. Now it is not reasonably certain to avail the renewal option, and hence this period has to be excluded. So this lease term has to be reduced, right? In the given case, as per Ind AS 116, the announcement by the government to discontinue the use of the underlying asset will prohibit the lessee from exercising the extension option, right? That was already included in the non-cancelable period by the company N, and hence company N will reassess the non-cancelable period to exclude the extension option of 5 years, right? Perfect. Very good. So thank you, Anu. Thank you, Pooja. Very good. So I must appreciate the students of this batch. They are very participative. They are very interactive, and they always used to respond, and most of the time with the right answers. Very good. So students, we have covered illustration number 17, illustration number 18 from the ICAI study material. Illustration number 17, earlier the option was not there, then subsequently the renewal option is exercised. Illustration number 18, earlier the option was there, renewal option was there, but now there was no reasonable certainty to avail the renewal option. Okay. I hope you guys have understood this part very well. Yes or no? I will take a pause for 30 seconds. If you have any question so far, please ask me that question. After that, I will cover the fourth leg of the lease contract and the most important part, because this part will talk about the measurement aspect as well, because this part will tell you what is meant by lease payments. I will take a 30 seconds pause. Please tell me. Tell me, friends. Any doubt, any question? Please unmute yourself and ask your doubt or question. No any doubt? No any question? Vignesh? I can see the response from Ginny, Hemant, Stephen, Pooja, Anu, Anila. Okay. Anyone else? Niranjan? Anyone else?
गुड मॉर्निंग सर।
Good morning.
सर मॉड्यूल में एक लाइन है जिसमें लिखा है कि चेंज इन मार्केट बेस्ड फैक्टर्स are not within the less's control and therefore they do not trigger a reassessment by themselves. देन सर जो भी हमने क्वेश्चन किया था उसमें मार्केट फैक्टर में ही चेंज हुआ था, क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट ने वो व्हीकल ही बंद करा दिया है, तो फिर उसको हमने रीअसेस।
वो मार्केट फैक्टर नहीं है, वो आपके क्या होते हैं, सो दीज आर नॉट द मार्केट फैक्टर्स, दीज आर बेसिकली रेगुलेटरी फैक्टर्स। आपका इकोनॉमिक एनवायरनमेंट होता है, आपका पॉलिटिकल एनवायरनमेंट होता है। जस्ट थिंक पूजा, आई थिंक यू आर पूजा, राइट?
नो सर, अनु।
Anu. So Anu, just think about the use of the asset, right? If government has banned that asset, right? Why you will extend your renewal option? आप करोगे क्या?
नो सर।
नहीं करोगे ना? प्रैक्टिकली सोचो,
सर।
यू आर इन टू इंटरव्यू, आपको मैंने दो ऑप्शन दिए, मैंने बोला कि आपका 5 ईयर का रिन्यूअल पीरियड है, इस व्हीकल की लाइफ थी 15 ईयर्स, ओके? आपने 5 साल का रिन्यूअल पीरियड था, इनिशियली यू आर सर्टेन दैट यस आई एम गोइंग टू अवेल द रिन्यूअल ऑप्शन, राइट? But now what happened? The government has banned that vehicle, right? So after banning that vehicle, what is the use of that vehicle to the lessee? Correct. लेसी के लिए इस व्हीकल का यूज क्या है? अगर मान लो आप इसका रिन्यूअल ऑप्शन जो है, अगर आप इसको कंटिन्यू रखते हो, इवन दो इन दैट केस योर एसेट विल गेटिंग इम्पेयर्ड, आपका राइट ऑफ यूज एसेट आपको पूरा का पूरा इम्पेयर करना पड़ेगा. You will not have any future economic benefit. You cannot use that asset, but you are paying rental. So having said that, जब आपके 5 साल पूरे होंगे, आप बताओ, जब 5 साल आपके पूरे होंगे और आपके पास ऑप्शन है रिन्यू करना या नहीं करना, आप करोगे रिन्यू?
नो सर।
नहीं करोगे ना. आप नया
Yes, sir.
एग्रीमेंट क्यों एंटर करोगे? आप तो वेट करोगे व्हेन माय 5 ईयर विल गेट कंप्लीटेड. आपका बाइंडिंग अग्रीमेंट तो 5 साल है, उसके बाद तो ऑप्शन है. तो आप ऐसे ऑप्शन में क्यों जाओगे जब आपको पता है कि मुझे तो कोई बेनिफिट मिलना ही नहीं है,
Okay,
राइट?
sir. Thank you, sir.
करेक्ट.
Clear. Clear, sir.
Very good. Friends, now the time has come when we understood that yes, this asset will come under the purview of Ind AS 116. Yes, 5 year is the lease term. But what are the lease rentals? What are the lease payments, right? We need to understand that. We need to understand that. Because for doing an accounting, you need number. आपको नंबर चाहिए ना, फिगर्स चाहिए, आपको नंबर चाहिए. वो नंबर कहां से आएंगे? वो राइट ऑफ यूज एसेट कैसे बनेगा? जब तक आपको लीज रेंटल नहीं पता होगा, यू कैन नॉट कैपिटलाइज योर राइट ऑफ यूज एसेट, यू कैन नॉट क्रेडिट लीज लाइबिलिटी, यू कैन नॉट डू एनी कैलकुलेशन. नाउ we will be discussing the consideration in the leases. We will be discussing the lease consideration, right? Friends, in this standard, there are many technical terms, like at various places the word customer has been used. What is meant by customer in this, in the context of this standard?
Lessee.
Lessee. Customer means lessee. Very good. What is meant by supplier in the context of this standard?
Yes, sir.
Lessor. Very good. Right. So likewise the consideration. So the technical meaning, the technical word for consideration is lease payments, right? Lease payments from the perspective of the lessee as well as from the perspective of the lessor. Lease payments does not mean कि payment का मतलब payment करनी है, outflow. Payments means inflow as well as outflow. Okay. If we are talking about lease payment from the perspective of the lessee, is it inflow or outflow?
Outflow, sir.
If it is from the perspective of lessor, that inflow or outflow?
Inflow.
Inflow. Okay. तो दोनों के लिए वर्ड लीज पेमेंट ही है, बट एग्जाम में क्वेश्चन करते वक्त ना थोड़ा दिमाग लगाना, ठीक है? ऐसा नहीं कि लीज पेमेंट वर्ड देखा और पेमेंट का मतलब ही सबके इसमें लेसी हो गया. नो, लीज पेमेंट, पेमेंट का मतलब पेमेंट होती है, राइट? So if it is a lessee who is paying, it is outflow. If it is a lessor who is receiving, it is inflow, right? But the word used is always lease payments. Correct? Correct. Will you be able to remember these small tricks? ये छोटी छोटी बातें आपको याद रहेंगी. I would request you to please write these kind of things which I'm telling you. Please write in your notebook or in some paper, right? Doesn't matter Hindi, English, but please do note these kind of small tips, right? It will help you. When you are preparing your notes, it will help you. Friends, we will be discussing the future lease payments, means lease payments. And why the word future is used? At the commencement date, you have to do the accounting. At the commencement date, the lease is started. Now in future, you are using this asset. You are using this asset in future. Okay. It means in future, you are paying the lease rentals. And today you are calculating present value of future lease rentals. Okay. So on this value, you are capitalizing right of use asset, crediting lease liability. So lease payments, what is meant by lease payment? Lease payment includes fixed payments. Lease payment includes fixed payments. Okay. So anyone who is living on a rental basis, anyone? I'm living on in a rental accommodation in Gurgaon. So let's say I'm living in a rental accommodation. Okay. I have entered into a lease agreement with my landlord, with my lessor. I am paying. So as per agreement, my rental is 35,000 rupees per month. My rental is 35,000 rupees per month. What is this? This is the fixed payment. This is fixed payment. Okay. Fixed rental mentioned in the contract. Fixed payment including in substance fixed payment. What is meant by in substance fixed payment? What is meant by in substance fixed payment? My landlords told, and when we entered into the agreement, so the agreement was like my lease rental is 35,000 rupees per month. Okay. Or for the sake of, for the sake of convenience, let's take my lease rental is 1 lakh rupees per year. Okay. And this lease agreement is for a period of 5 years. And every year there is a 10% escalation. Every year there is a 10% escalation. Sitting today, am I able to know or am I able to calculate what will be my rental in the second year, third year, fourth year, and fifth year?
Yes, sir, with the escalation clause. With the increase.
Yes. Yes, I will be able to compute. I will be able to know what is my rental in the second, third, fourth, and fifth year. So don't you think that increment is in substance fixed payment? So I know my fixed payment is 10,000 rupees, but in the next year it will be 11,000 rupees. In the third year it will be 12,100 rupees. In the third year it is 13,300 rupees. In the fourth year it is 14,500 rupees. Yes or no? So friends, this increment is also in substance fixed. In substance तो fixed ही है ना, इतना बढ़ जाएगा. So your lease payment will include fixed payment, including in substance fixed payment, less any lease incentive, less any lease incentives. What is meant by lease incentive? For example, the lessor is giving some lease incentives to the lessee. Okay. So lessor is saying that not to worry, please enter into the lease agreement. Please do the agreement, and as a support, I will pay you 15,000 rupees for the loading, unloading, etc., etc. Okay. I'll give you 15,000 rupees. So lessor is giving some incentive to the lessee, like in case of, commercial spaces, like in case of malls, in case of whenever there is a new mall which is opening, so you must have seen they have a big outlet which is called as an anchor outlet, like Big Bazaar, Reliance, Chroma, Vijay Sales, right? West Side, Max, Lifestyle. So what happened? The mall company or the mall authority are also giving lease incentives to these companies to open their store in their mall. What is the benefit to the mall if they will open their store? What is the benefit? आपने तो देखा होगा ना, आप सब मॉल गए हो.
Sir,
Sorry?
this
Because more footfall, more people will come to the mall and spend more over there.
Yes, more footfall will be there. So there is an increased people who will, the more people will visit mall. There is an increased footfall, right? And more outlet will open. And you must have seen, as you know, outside this big outlet, there is a person who has put a stall for the sweet corn, momos, right? Some cafeteria, some cafes. Okay, so they are giving incentives. Please come and open your store with us. And since these are the anchor stores means big stores, they take more space, like half of the floor they will take, okay, or full floor they will take, okay. So this is kind of, benefit to the mall, and hence they are also giving the incentive to the lessee, okay. So friends, your lease payment will include fixed payment plus in substance fixed payment, less if the lessor has given any incentive to the lessee. That incentive has to be reduced from the lease payments calculation. Is it clear to everyone? Is it clear to everyone or not clear so far? Okay. Plus variable lease payment that dependent on an index or a rate measured using a prevailing rate at measurement date. Variable lease payment. What is meant by variable lease payment? Which varies, which you are not aware as of today, right? Variable lease payment. For example, in many commercial contracts, you know how lessor will do the contract. So lessor will tell to the lessee that, Mr. Lessee, I will charge 5 lakh rupees rental from you. So the lessee told, sir, I have just started my business and I'm not sure whether I will have such a paying capacity of 5 lakh rupees rental to you or not. Then lessor told, let's do one thing. Split this rental into two parts, fixed and variable. Okay. I will charge 3.5 lakh as a fixed rental, plus whatever sales you will do, you have to give me 2% of your sales. You have to give me 2% of your sales. Right. If the sales is, let's say, 5 lakh rupees, you can give me 10,000 rupees. So loss is mine. If the sales is 1 crore rupee, you have to give me 2 lakh rupees. The profit is mine. More risk, more reward, right? So friends, 3.5 lakh is the fixed rental, plus 2% of the sales will be given to the lessor. What is this 2% of the sales? Variable, you are right, Anu? Variable. Are you able to aware that how much variable rental you are going to pay in the second year, third year, fourth year, and fifth year? No, because it is totally dependent on the performance. It is totally depending on the performance, right? Friends, standard says that the variable lease payment, which is not depending on any index or a rate, that variable lease payment is not required to be taken into the lease payment calculation, right? Sir, which variable lease payment has to be taken into the lease payment calculation? A variable lease payment which is depending on an index or a rate measured using a prevailing rate at a measurement date. Means, for example, the lessor has told to the lessee that, the market is very fluctuating, right? So let's agree on a rental of, let's say, 5 lakh rupees per year. Plus, I will also take an escalation depending on a consumer price index of the country. Consumer price index of the country, CPI. Will you know the CPI today at the measurement date? Will you know the CPI? Publish होता है ना, होलसेल प्राइस इंडेक्स, कंज्यूमर प्राइस इंडेक्स, पता है ना आपको? जीडीपी यूडीपी के डेटा सब पब्लिश होते हैं. Yes or no? Yes, RBI publish all this data. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So friends, if this escalation, this increment, this rental is on the basis of an index or a rate, right? That variable payment has to be taken into the consideration. But if the variable lease payment is depending on a sales, right, on a future outcome, it will not be taken into consideration for the lease payment calculation, right? Understood? Why? Because that is depending on the performance, and this is depending on the this is like compensating the lessor for the increased inflation, right? Friends, if the lease payment which is depending on the sales is a variable lease payment which is not considered while computing the lease payment calculation, then where it will go? लेसी को पे तो करना है, जो भी सेल्स होगी उसका 2% पे करना है, तो एंट्री क्या होगी? अकाउंटिंग एंट्री क्या होगी?
Expense to bank.
एक्सपेंस टू बैंक. वेरी गुड. रेंट एक्सपेंस टू बैंक, मतलब उसका कोई आरओयू की कैलकुलेशन में उसको कंसिडर नहीं करेंगे. विल नॉट कंसिडर दैट इन द आरओयू कैलकुलेशन, राइट? बट इफ that lease increments, lease variable lease payment is on the basis of an index or a rate, in that case we will consider it in ROU calculation, right? We will estimate using the prevailing consumer price index, wholesale price index, inflation rate at the measurement date, right? जो भी rate होगा उसके basis पे हम उसको consider करेंगे. For example, the consumer price index is 2% as on the measurement date, and the rental is, let's say, 1 lakh rupee. So at the end of every year, the rental will be reset. So what is my rental in the second year? 1 lakh plus 2%, 1 lakh 2,000. Third year, 1 lakh 2,000 plus 2%, right? This is how it is going to be measured, right? So these kind of variable lease payment on the basis of index or a rate, in a way, it will become in substance fixed payment. Correct? Correct? So friends, please remember the fixed payment, including in substance fixed payment minus lease incentive plus variable payment, which is depending on a index or a rate, right? Not on the basis of quantity, volume, okay? Plus exercise price of a purchase option. What is this? What is this? Exercise price of a purchase option.
What is the end of the lease agreement?
In many lease contract, for example, in case of aviation companies as well, airline companies, they are taking aircraft on a lease basis, right? In many contract, in many aircraft, they have a purchase option. The lessor will tell to the lessee that after a certain period of time, for example, let's say 5 years, you have a purchase option. You can pay me X amount and you can purchase this aircraft. If the lessee is reasonably certain that lessee is going to exercise the purchase option, in that case, the lessee has to pay exercise price, correct? So that exercise price is also become part of your future lease payments, right? Include it. You have to include it. Fourth, penalties for terminating the lease. Penalties for terminating the lease. You remember when we were discussing this lease term? We discussed optional termination period. We discussed optional renewal period, right? For example, if the company is terminating, the lessee is terminating the lease, okay? Lessee is reasonably certain that it will terminate after 3 years or 4 years. And there is a penalty for the termination. So that penalty will also considered as a lease payment, okay? That penalty will also considered as a lease payment. Fifth, residual value guarantees by the lessee. Residual value guarantees by the lessee, right? The lessor has given a car on a lease basis to the lessee, okay? Now what happened? The life of the car is 15 years, okay? And this lessee has taken the car for 10 years. Okay? The lessor told that you are using my car for the most of my life of the car, and might be due to your rough uses, right? Probably you will run this car in very off-road kind of a conditions, in difficult roads, on a difficult roads. Probably you will do the rough driving. My value of the car will go down. So I, as a lessee, is giving a residual value guarantee to the lessor. I am saying not to worry. Okay, I am giving you a guarantee that I'll pay you, or you will get 1 lakh rupees of this residual value of the car. So residual value guarantee is given by the lessee, right? So whatever residual value guarantee is given by the lessee, that is also considered into the lease payment. Correct? So friends, what are the 5 items which has to be considered into the lease payments? What are the 5 items? Anyone who can unmute and who can tell me these 5 items from the perspective of the lessee. Please unmute and tell me these 5 items.
Fixed payment less lease incentive if any, variable payment, and exercise price of purchase option, penalties if I am terminating the lease in between the period, and residual value guaranteed by the lessee to the lessor.
Very good. So 5 items are fixed payment, including in substance fixed payment, less lease incentives, if any, plus variable lease payment, which is depending on an index or a rate, not on the basis of performance, quantity or volume. Plus, if lessee is going to exercise, then exercise price. Plus, if lessee is reasonably certain to terminate and there is a penalty for termination, that penalty also. Plus, any residual value guarantee given by the lessee to the lessor. Right? These are the 5 items. These are the 5 items which needs to be considered for the lease payment calculation. Lease payment calculation. Okay. So friends, let me take you to the Excel file and let's start the journey of lease payments. Let me use the another worksheet, and I'll make this worksheet, day wise. Like the first worksheet was 3rd November. The second worksheet is today, 5th November. Okay. This will be helpful to you. Okay, so let's discuss lease payments. I hope my Excel file is visible to everyone. Is it visible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Lease payments. Let's discuss lease payment. Lease payment includes what? Help me out.
Fixed payments.
Lease payment includes fixed lease payment. Fixed lease payments. Fixed lease payments के बाद plus in substance lease payments. In substance lease payments. Okay. Plus in substance fixed payment. Fixed payment.
Less any lease incentives.
Less lease incentives. Lease incentives. Lessee. Fixed lease payments. In substance fixed lease payments, then your lease incentives. Okay. Then इसके बाद क्या?
Variable lease payment.
वेरिएबल लीज पेमेंट. आपको बताता रहना पड़ेगा, मेरे को याद नहीं रहता ये सब. वेरिएबल लीज पेमेंट
Depending on index or rate.
Depending on the index or rate. Very good. Very good, students.
And that to earn measurement date rate.
Yes, measurement date rate. Very good. Then उसके
Exercise
बाद क्या?
price of a purchase option.
Exercise price in case of a purchase option. Exercise price in case of a purchase option. एक्सरसाइज प्राइस इन केस ऑफ अ परचेज ऑप्शन। अगर परचेज ऑप्शन ही नहीं होगा तो एक्सरसाइज प्राइस लेंगे?
No.
जब
No,
परचेज ऑप्शन ही नहीं है तो एक्सरसाइज प्राइस क्यों लोगे? लेसोर ने आपको ऑप्शन ही नहीं दिया कि आप एसेट खरीद सकते हो। लेसोर हैज नॉट गिवन यू द ऑप्शन दैट यू कैन बाय दैट एसेट। हाउ कैन यू बाय दैट एसेट? राइट, बिकॉज द ओनर इज लेसोर। सो जस्ट थिंक लॉजिकली। आई विल ओनली रिक्वेस्ट, थिंक लॉजिकली। आपका टेनेंट है, you have a tenant, you have given a floor to the tenant, there is a lease agreement, you have not given him an option to purchase, so will he be able to purchase? Answer is no. एक्सरसाइज प्राइस की बात ही खत्म हो गई। then
Penalties for termination of the lease.
penalties, termination penalties, termination penalties, termination penalties. then
Residual value guaranteed by the lessee to the lease. Lessor.
residual value guarantee by the whom? By the lessee.
Lessee.
To the lessor, of course. This is my lease payments from the perspective of the lessee. But what from the perspective of the lessor? Lessor के perspective से क्या होगा? ये तो lessee के perspective से था। Lessee is one who is paying and the lessor is one who is receiving. What from the perspective of lessor, friends? क्या होगा lessor के perspective से? ये सब होंगे
same copy paste.
same copy paste. Very good. You have helped me. Very good. Thank you. Same copy paste. Right. But there is one addition in case of a lessor. In case of a lessee, there are 5 lease payment. But in case of a lessor, there are 6 lease payments. Right? What is the last one?
Residual value which is guaranteed by other than a lessee parties are also included in that.
Very good. Residual value guaranteed by any party related or not related to the lessee. Right? For example, I am having a car. I am a lessor. I am having a car. Okay. I have given this car on a lease basis to Anu. Anu is the lessee. I am the lessor. Right. So Anu has not given me any guarantee, residual value guarantee, but I have a contract with Maruti. I have a Maruti car. Maruti told me not to worry, just run this car for 10 years. After 10 years, take this car to us. We will give you 50,000 rupees. We will give you 50,000 rupees. So who has given me residual value guarantee? Who has given me residual value guarantee? Who has?
Maruti, third party.
Third party, not related to lessee. So residual value guarantee by the party related oblique unrelated to the lessee. Unrelated to the lessee. Right? Any third party, right? अगर third party ने guarantee दी है, तो उस केस में will we include this from the lessee perspective? Of course no. Lessee has not given any guarantee. But lessor को तो पैसा मिलेगा ना, so lessor will include this aspect also. So this is one of the additional aspect which will be considered from the lessor perspective. So lease payments. Yes, Pooja, you have a question?
Sir, in module where the residual value guarantees for lessor have been explained, they have used the word third party unrelated to the lessor.
Third party unrelated to the
Lessor.
lessor हो lessee हो, बात तो एक ही है ना. Third party
Means
तो
we
third
can
party
take
होगी
that
ना.
unrelated party to lessee
So
also.
lessor, वहां पर lessor इसलिए word use किया because it is talking from the lessor perspective. वो lessor की बात कर रहे हैं ना कि वो lessor में ये include होगा, right? So residual value guarantee to the lessor given by whom? कौन देगा guarantee? Any third party related or unrelated to the lessee. मॉड्यूल में exactly क्या लिखा है?
Exactly, they are saying that guarantee is given by lessee, comma, a party related to the lessee. Then they are saying a third party unrelated to the lessor.
It has to be unrelated to the lessee होना चाहिए.
Okay,
Lessee.
sir. I was okay.
Right? So party related or unrelated to the lessee, not lessee. अगर लेसी पे कर रहा है फिर तो लेसी के भी उसमें आ जाएगा, करेक्ट. If lessee is paying something, so that is the lease payment which has to be considered by lessee as well as the lessor for the calculations. Okay. But if this residual value guarantee is given by a party who is not lessee but who is related to the lessee, or residual value guarantee given by a third party who is an individual third party, right? Not lessee, not lessor, anyone. मतलब कि लेसी नहीं, लेसी से रिलेटेड है ही नहीं, वो थर्ड पार्टी है जिसने लेसोर को गारंटी दी है. सो फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ कैलकुलेशन फ्रॉम लेसोर परस्पेक्टिव, लेसोर को तो पैसा मिलेगा ना, सो इट हैज टू बी कंसिडर्ड एज अ लीज पेमेंट फ्रॉम द परस्पेक्टिव ऑफ लेसोर. सो दिस इज ओनली वन एडिशन इन द लीज पेमेंट कॉम्पुटेशन फ्रॉम द लेसर परस्पेक्टिव, राइट. तो ये पांचों तो कॉपी पेस्ट हो गई. किसने बोला था कॉपी पेस्ट?
पूजा सर.
पूजा. ओके, सो वेरी गुड. ये सारा तो कॉपी पेस्ट हो गई होगा, बट उसके साथ इन एडिशन फ्रॉम द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ लेसर, इफ somebody else has given a guarantee, that guarantee is also going to be captured in the lease payment calculations, right? Friends, let's do some illustration, let's do some questions, and let's make our understanding more robust for the lease payment calculations. Okay. Okay, correct. So let's discuss one illustration. So just allow me a minute. I'm looking for a good example. Yes. Example. Lease contract is 5 years. Lease contract 5 years, lease payment 10,000 every year, escalation clause 10%, exercise price at the end of lease term 15,000, residual value guarantee at the end of the lease term 10,000. This is the information which is given. Okay. Determine lease payment for every year in the books of the lessee. Every year in the books of the lessee. Right. Okay. You need to help me in determining the lease payment in the books of the lessee. I'll just write this entire part, particulars. And on the right side, I'll write year 1, year 1, year 2, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. Okay. This question will clear your entire concept of this lease payment. Friends, what is my fixed lease payment? Tell me what is my fixed lease payment?
10,000.
10,000. Very good. 10,000 is my fixed lease payments. किसी को डाउट तो नहीं है ना 10,000 पे? 10,000 is my fixed lease payment. What is my in substance fixed lease payment in the first year?
10, first year 0.
In the second year, the lease increment is 10%. Escalation clause is 10% every year. So year 2 पे what will be my rent in year 2? 10,000 का 110%, 11,000. So what is my in substance fixed lease payment? 1,000. बराबर है ना? ठीक है, 1,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What is my lease payment in year 3? 11,000 multiplied by 110%. 12,100. So what is my in substance fixed lease payment in year 3?
1,100.
2,100. In third year, in fourth year, it will become 13,310. What is my in substance fixed lease payment in year 4? 3,310.
So is
What
that
is my-
cumulative we will take and
What is my this one? 4,641, right? This is kind of a fixed lease payment, in substance fixed lease payment, correct? ठीक है ना इतना? I hope there is no any problem. in this calculation? Okay. Lease incentive. Is there any lease incentive in this question? कोई lease incentive है क्या इस question में?
No, sir.
Variable lease payment. Is there any variable lease payment in this question depending on index or a rate?
No, sir.
No. Okay. So 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Exercise price in case of a purchase option. Whether exercise price is given in this question?
Yes, sir.
So when this lease payment will be there?
5th year.
In the 5th year. Very good. How much? 15,000. Is there any termination penalty in the question?
Zero.
No.
Any residual value guarantee?
Yes, sir.
10,000 in the first year? Yes?
End of lease term,
Last
sir.
year.
Last year. Very good. So it means all are listening, right? Very good. 10,000. Residual value तो last में आएगा ना? Okay. So what is my year-wise lease payment? What is my year-wise lease payments? This is my year-wise lease payments, right? This is my year-wise lease payment. Now, what is the entry? So year-wise lease payment तो पता लग गई. Lease term 5 year. Year-wise lease payment is this one. And what is my total payment? What is my total payment? Equal to sum of. My total lease payment is 86,051. Now my question is, what is the accounting entry on day 1? Commencement date पे accounting entry क्या होगी? लेसी क्या accounting entry करेगा commencement date पे?
ROU to lease liability.
ROU to lease liability. Very good. Right of use asset account debit to lease liability. Value कहां से लेके आऊं? To lease liability. From where I can find the value? क्या
Total
करूं?
lease
86,051 पे कर दूं?
payments. No, sir. We have to discount that to the present value.
We have to discount. So whether discount rate is given in this question?
No,
Discount
sir.
rate दिया है इस question में, दिया है ना 10%. Escalation clause दिया है, discount rate नहीं दिया है. Okay, very good. So assuming discount rate of 10%, let's assume discount rate also 10%. Assuming discount rate of 10%. So these are my lease payments. Now I am going to compute the present value factor. Present value factor at the rate of 10%. So this is at the end of the first year. This is at the end of the first year. What is my present value factor? 1 divided by 1.1. Then this divided by 1.1, so on and so forth. This is my present value factor. What is my present value? What is my PV? My PV is this multiplied by this. This is my PV. What is my total of the PV? 60,978. What is the accounting entry? Right of use asset account debit to lease liability. Have you understood? This is the impact of lease payment. अगर आप लीज पेमेंट को गलत प्लेस करते तो क्या होता? If inadvertently, if you have placed this residual value guarantee not at this place, rather at this place, then what will happen? Your numbers have changed, right? Your calculation become wrong. Okay. So have you understood the concept of lease payment? Yes, Pooja and Nisha, you have a question. Please unmute and ask the question.
Sir, while we are taking that lessee would certainly take that purchase option, then why we are taking this residual value guarantee by lessee?
So technically speaking, you are right. Technically speaking, in the practical life, you are right. That if I am taking a purchase option, why I am giving a residual value guarantee? Technically, I agree with you. But for example, if lessor has splitted the contract, lessor has told that whenever you exercise the purchase option, you have to give me 10 lakh rupees as a purchase option, and you have to also give me 1 lakh rupees as a residual value guarantee. Means, so basically splitting the purchase option into two parts, right? So just for the sake of explaining this example, I have taken this. In the real world, I agree with you.
Okay,
Yes.
sir.
Nisha, you have a question?
Just the escalation clause, you have accumulated it. Is this the normal way that you need for?
Nisha, I'm not able to hear you properly.
So the
Can you be a
escalation
little
clause.
loud, please?
For the escalation clause, insufficient fixed lease payment. You have cumulatively given, wouldn't it, for example, for the first year, considering the, for the second year, wouldn't be the increased value of the first year, the 10%?
So Nisha,
Yeah.
basically what happened, if you can see, in substance fixed payment, and what is the difference between fixed payment and in substance fixed payment? Largely, fixed payment is something which is day one payment, right? Which is there in the contract, like 10,000 in this case. So 10,000 is the amount from which this contract has a begin with, right? The contract was started with 10,000, right? So every year, for example, from second year, 11,000 will become fixed. The third year, 12,100 become fixed. Third year, fourth year, 13,310 become fixed. Okay. So it will always be there. So technically what happened, fixed payment you will consider from which you have started your contract. And in substance fixed means the impact of the escalation clause, right? So that is how you have to show that. There will hardly make a difference, उससे कोई difference नहीं आएगा. But आपने जिस पेमेंट से स्टार्ट किया है, you have to show that as a fixed lease payment, and the escalation will become in substance fixed payment. Okay, this is how you need to present.
Thank you, sir.
But there will hardly make any difference. Okay. Any other question? Shall I move to the more questions and illustration from ICAI study material? I hope you have understood this ROU, lease liability calculation, lease payment, lease term. Yes, no? Yes, okay. Now let me take you to the illustration number 19. Entity M and lessor A enter into a 10-year lease of an office building for fixed annual lease payment of rupees 22 lakh. As per the terms of the lease agreement, annual fixed lease payment comprise 1,70,000 for rent and 30,000 for real estate taxes. What are the fixed lease payment for the purpose of classifying the lease?
Two lakh.
Sorry?
That 2 lakh.
2 lakh rupees. So basically they have splitted it only. So it is a 2 lakh rupees. So the lessor has told that give me 170 as a rent and give me 30,000 for real estate taxes. Right. So who is responsible for paying real estate taxes? Lessor. But lessor is collecting from the lessee. So from the perspective of lessee, this entire 2 lakh rupee is a lease rental, right? This 30,000 is not a non-lease component. इस 30,000 की वजह से कोई different services नहीं मिल रही. But if lessor, for example, lessor will tell you that pay me 1,70,000 rupees for rent and pay me 30,000 rupees for electricity charge or water bill. In that case, what is your fixed lease payment?
Variable lease payment, sir.
Water charge would be based on consumption. So 1,70,000 would be the
1,70,000 will be rent. This water and electricity charge. Why lessor is collecting? Lessor is collecting because you are getting a different goods and services. आपको इलेक्ट्रिसिटी मिल रही है, नहीं मिल रही होती तो क्या होता? आपको खुद का जनरेटर लगाना पड़ता. वाटर आपको मिल रहा है, राइट? बट रियल एस्टेट टैक्सेस, आर यू गेटिंग अ सेपरेट गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज? मिल रहा है आपको?
No, sir.
नहीं ना. So there is no separation of a lease component. So in this case, this entire 2 lakh is a kind of a fixed payment. Okay. Illustration number 21. In substance fixed lease payment. Please read this illustration and tell me quickly what is the answer. फटाफट मुझे आंसर बताओ। व्हाट इज द आंसर? Okay, no one has given the answer. No. Okay, let me bring a student inside me and let me read this question and give you the answer. Entity P. So Hemant has given some answer. Entity P enters into a 5-year lease for office space with entity Q. Term is 5 year. Initial base rent is 1 lakh rupees per month. Okay, fixed lease payment 1 lakh rupees per month. Rent increased by the higher of 1% of entities P's generated sales or 2% of previous rent on each anniversary of the lease commencement date. Okay, 1% of entities P's sales, 1% of sales. Are you able to compute 1% of sales today? Do you know how much sales this company will make in future?
No, sir.
No.
But another parameter is also given, or 2% of the previous rental rate on each anniversary of the lease commencement date. 2% of the previous rental rate. 2% of the previous rental rate. So in the second year, what is the 2% of this 1 lakh? 2,000 rupees, right? So 2% of previous rent. In the first year, the previous rent was, in the first year, the rent was 1 lakh. So what is the 2% in the second year? 2,000 rupees. So assuming this company will not make any sales. Assuming this company will not make any sales. What is my 1% of sales? 0. Or 2% of previous rent, which is 2,000. And whichever is higher, that has to be taken as a rent escalation. So friends, don't you think doesn't matter how much sales will be there, even it's 0 or even 50 crores, this minimum of 2,000 has to be paid as an escalation? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
ये क्लियर है या क्लियर है?
Yes, sir. Clear it.
मिनिमम आपको अगर मैं पूछूं, इफ आई विल आस्क यू व्हाट इज द मिनिमम पेमेंट विच दिस लेसी हैज टू मेक एडिशनली एज एन इंक्रीमेंट, कितना करेंगे? मिनिमम 2% तो करना ही पड़ेगा ना। अगर सेल्स 0 है तो भी 2% करना पड़ेगा, और अगर सेल्स ज्यादा है तो भी 2% तो मिनिमम आएगा ही, उससे ज्यादा आएगा, करेक्ट? So friends, in the given case, the lease payment for the purpose of classifying the lease are fixed monthly payment of 1 lakh plus the minimum annual increase of 2% of the previous rental. Entity P is required to pay not less than a 2% increase regardless of the sales activity. Therefore, the minimum level of increase is in substance fixed lease payment. So in this case, my fixed lease payment for the 5 year is how much? For the 5 year, it is 1 lakh, 1 lakh, 1 lakh, 1 lakh, 1 lakh. And what is my 2% increase? In the second year, 1 lakh 2,000. In the third year, 2% of 1 lakh 2,000. In the fourth year, fifth year, so on and so forth. Right? This is how this in substance fixed lease payment will be taken into consideration. Okay. Any doubt in this question? Any doubt in this question, friends? No? Yes or no?
No, sir.
No? Very good. Illustration number 23. Variable lease payment that depend on an index or a rate. Okay. An entity enters into a 10-year lease of property. Lease term 10 years. The lease payment for the first year is rupees 1,000. Okay. Fixed payment is 1,000. The lease payments are linked to the consumer price index. that is not a floating interest rate. Consumer price index. After reading this line, I'm just remembering, oh, this lease payment is linked to a consumer price index. It means it is talking about some index or a rate. In the lease payment formula, there was something, yes, variable lease payment depending on an index or a rate. Okay, let's read this question. The consumer price index at the beginning of the first year is 100. Lease payment are updated at the end of every second year. Okay, this escalation clause is at the end of every second year. It means there are 5 escalation. Okay, in this 10-year term. At the end of year 1, the consumer price index is 105. At the end of year 2, the consumer price index is 108. What should be included in lease payments? Tell me.
Every second year, we will update our lease payments according to the changes in the index.
Every
Second year, sir. Every second year.
every second year, right? So like in this case, at the lease commencement date, the lease payments are 1,000 every year for 10 years, right? The entity does not take into consideration the potential future changes in the index. So whatever is the consumer price index on the day 1, the entity has to take accordingly. At the end of year 1, the payment have not changed and hence the liability is not updated. But at the end of year 2, when the lease payment change, the entity update the remaining 8 lease payment to 1080 per year. So friends, what happened? You remember there was a line which was written. So variable lease payment that is depending on an index or a rate measured using a prevailing rate at measurement date. Using a prevailing rate at a measurement date, right? So what is the consumer price index on the day 1? On the measurement date, it is 100. So on the day one, what is your lease payments? 1000. Day 1 पे आपकी लीज पेमेंट कितनी है 10 साल की? 1000 ही है ना, कोई डाउट तो नहीं है ना इसमें? 1000 है. कंज्यूमर प्राइस इंडेक्स 100 है. सो 100 by 100 into 1000, राइट? 2 साल में रीसेट होनी है आपकी लीज पेमेंट. सो व्हेन यू कम टू 2 year, व्हेन योर कैश फ्लो हैज टू बी चेंज्ड. सो स्टैंडर्ड कहता है जब भी आपका कैश फ्लो अपडेट होगा, आपको अगर वेरिएबल पेमेंट इज डिपेंडिंग ऑन एन इंडेक्स और अ रेट, you have to update your rate as well. Okay, for example, in this case, due to the updation in your variable rate index rate, your cash flow will change to 1080 from 1000. So now for the remaining 8 years you have to take 1080, and your ROU and lease liability is also going to be remeasured. सर वो रीमेजरमेंट कैसे होगी हम उसको डिस्कस करेंगे बाद में. इज दैट क्लियर? आप तो डे अकाउंटिंग तो डे 1 से स्टार्ट कर दोगे ना. यू हैव टू कंप्यूट योर ROU and lease liability on the day 1. On the day 1 the index rate was 100 only, right? So your lease payment for the next 10 year estimated lease payment is 1000. But when you come to the second year and you found the actual index is 108, in that case you have to update your lease payments, and for the remaining 8 year, this remaining 8 year lease payment has to be taken as a 108. Okay, clear? Any doubt? So illustration number 23 we have also completed. So friends, then we will discuss interest rate, discount rate. So let's have a break. It's 8:34 now.
Sir,
Yes, you have a
yes, sir.
question?
सर ये रिमेनिंग 8 years में 108 ही क्यों लेंगे सर? आगे तो नेक्स्ट ईयर में तो ये इंक्रीज होता जाएगा CPI.
So at the end of the second year, जब आप at the end of the second year रीमेजर करोगे ROU and lease liability, तो आप रीमेजर करने के लिए आपको प्रेजेंट वैल्यू ऑफ फ्यूचर लीज रेंटल चाहिए होगा ना. उस टाइम पे आप अगले 8 साल का 1080 कंसिडर करोगे. जब आप 4th year के एंड पे आओगे, when you come to the end of the 4th year, then again you will check what is my index rate, right?
Yes,
For
sir.
example, the index rate will become, let's say 110. So what will be your outflows in that case? 1100 हो जाएगा ना.
Yes,
अगर
sir.
110 होगा तो अगले 6 साल का आपका 110 लोगे कब? एट द एंड ऑफ द 4th year. Okay.
Okay, sir.
because you are computing present value of future lease rentals. You will do the remeasurement of your ROU and lease liability. So I will discuss this remeasurement as a part of the subsequent measurement, right? मैं discuss करूंगा कि remeasurement में कैसे impact लेते हैं. आपका ROU और lease liability में change होता है तो उस change का impact कैसे लेते हैं. I will discuss that. Okay. So friends, it's 8:35. Let's have a 10 minutes break and we will start our session at 8:45. Mr. Ayers, that is a break of 10 minutes. Students, so far we have understood the lease term and lease payments, which is consideration from the perspective of lessee as well as the lessor. Now the point is, what is the discount rate, right? What is the rate at which these rentals are going to be discounted to be capitalized as a right of use asset or to be recognized as a lease liability, right? So what is the discount rate? Okay. Standard says that whenever you have to discount, you have to compute the discount rate. But what is that discount rate? So the discount rate is the interest rate implicit in the lease. Interest rate. Discount rate is the discount rate. Is the interest rate implicit in the lease. Implicit in the lease. Interest rate implicit in the lease. Now, what is interest rate implicit in the lease? Interest rate implicit in the lease is the lessor IRR. It is the lessor IRR. Lessor ka internal rate of return. Interest rate implicit in the lease is the rate which equalizes the below equation. Right? It is more like a lessor IRR. It is more like a lessor IRR. More like a lessor internal rate of return. Right? Which equation? So internal rate of return is that return, that interest rate, right? That percentage which equalizes present value of lease payment to the lessor plus present value of unguaranteed residual value should be equal to fair value of the asset plus initial direct cost. Present value of the lease payments to the lessor, whatever lessor is getting over the lease term, present value of the lease payment to the lessor, plus what? Present value of unguaranteed residual value, present value of unguaranteed residual value is equal to fair value of the lease asset plus initial direct cost सर ये क्या है? Friends, if you are a lessee, right? If you are a lessee and you have taken an asset on a lease basis for 10 years, you are paying a lease rental of 1 lakh rupees every year, right? On the day one, you have to recognize right of use asset and lease liability. It means you have to discount your future lease payments on the present value at a measurement date. You have to discount it on the present value at a measurement date. Now the question is, what is the rate which you will take? Standard says that the first preference is you have to take a lessor IRR. What is the internal rate of return to the lessor? Right? लेसोर मुझसे जो भी इंस्टॉलमेंट मांग रहा है, लेसोर मुझसे जो भी लीज पेमेंट मांग रहा है, राइट, उसमें लेसोर का इंटरनल रेट ऑफ रिटर्न क्या है? नाउ माय फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन टू यू गाइस, विल यू एज अ लेसी विल यू बी एबल टू नो कि लेसोर क्या कमा रहा है, लेसोर का इंटरनल रेट ऑफ रिटर्न क्या है? विल यू बी एबल टू नो दिस? अगर मैं आपको अपना मकान किराए पे दे रहा हूं, क्या आपको पता होगा मैंने किराया किस हिसाब से रखा है? अगर मेरे मकान की वैल्यू 1 करोड़ है, वैल्यू फेयर वैल्यू मेरे मकान की, और मेरे मकान की लाइफ 50 साल है, इफ द फेयर वैल्यू ऑफ माई हाउस इज 1 करोड़ रुपीज टुडे एंड द लाइफ ऑफ माई हाउस इज 50 years, right, and I want to have a return of let's say 5% on this 1 crore because I'm maintaining this house also, I'm taking a responsibility of this house, so I also want a margin. Accordingly, I have fixed the rentals. Right, but as a tenant, as a lessee, will you be able to know कि मैं कितना कमा रहा हूं?
No,
मेरा
sir.
इंटरनल रेट ऑफ रिटर्न क्या है? क्या पता होगा आपको? नहीं पता होगा. Generally, friends, lessee is not able to aware about the lessor IRR, right? lessor IRR. In that case, standard says that if the interest rate implicit in the lease is not available to the lessee, then lessee needs to identify the incremental borrowing rate to the lessee. Incremental borrowing rate to the lessee. Right. In case interest rate implicit in the lease is not available to the lessee, then lessee needs to identify the incremental borrowing rate to the lessee. Right? Matlab, if I am taking an asset for 10-year lease basis, right? I am paying a rental of, let's say, 5 lakh rupees per year. So total I am paying 50 lakh rupees. Okay. If I have to borrow the money to buy that asset and I have to take a loan, can I get the rate from the bank that what is the interest rate bank will charge to me? If a bank will give me 50 lakh rupees loan for buying an asset for a period of 10 years, can bank will give me a quotation or quote for a rate? Can I get the incremental borrowing rate of mine? कि मुझे किस rate पे मिलेगा? Yes, I can get. So standard says that you can use incremental borrowing rate for doing the present value calculation. So friends, discount rate is a rate which is interest rate implicit in the lease, means the lessor internal rate of return. If lessor IRR is not available, you can use incremental borrowing rate, right? And what is lessor IRR? Which equalizes the present value of the lease payment which the lessor is getting plus unguaranteed residual value is equal to fair value of the lease asset. मतलब मेरी इस एसेट की वैल्यू आज 1 करोड़ है, तो मुझे जितना भी लीज रेंटल से आएगा उसकी प्रेजेंट वैल्यू 50 साल में, फॉर एग्जाम्पल इट इज कमिंग एट 90 लाख रुपीज, और मुझे पता है कि जब इस एसेट को डिस्कार्ड करूंगा मैं तो मुझे कम से कम 10 लाख रुपए की रेसिडुअल वैल्यू तो आ जाएगी, राइट? 10 लाख रुपए की रेसिडुअल वैल्यू, प्रेजेंट वैल्यू उसकी 10 लाख है, उस टाइम पे 25 लाख रुपए की रेसिडुअल वैल्यू आ जाएगी. जब मैं डेमोलिश करूंगा अपने हाउस को, आई विल सेल द स्क्रैप. स्क्रैप मीन्स उसके अंदर आयरन होगा, स्टील होगा, उसके अंदर बहुत सारी चीजें होंगी जो ब्रिक्स होंगी जिसको मैं सेल कर सकता हूं, राइट? सो दैट व्हेन आई टोटल दिस माय प्रेजेंट वैल्यू ऑफ लीज पेमेंट plus unguaranteed residual value, it will equalizes to fair value of the lease asset. Okay, right friends, not to worry. Generally the interest rate will be given in the question. You are only required to remember that the first priority is IRR, interest rate implicit in the lease, and the second priority is incremental borrowing rate. Example. So let me write an example so that you will remember this forever. A Limited has taken an office on a rental basis for rupees 1 lakh for 3 years from B Limited. B Limited IRR is 10%. 10%. A Limited can take a loan for same asset for a period of 3 years at 8%. Compute the ROU and lease liability at the commencement date. सही है क्वेश्चन? ये क्वेश्चन ठीक है? जब आप इस क्वेश्चन को रेफर करोगे आपको याद आ जाएगा कि मैंने क्या किया है. इसमें मैंने दोनों रेट दे दिए. I have given you the lessor IRR. I have given you the incremental borrowing rate to the lessee also. Which rate you will take?
10%, sir. B
Why?
Limited IRR.
Why?
Because we know that first preference
Yes.
is for the IRR of the B Limited. Yes, sir.
In this question, the lessor IRR as well as the lessee IBR. What is IBR?
Incremental borrowing rate.
Incremental borrowing rate. let me write this IBR. Incremental borrowing rate is given. Hence, we will take lessor IR to compute the present value. What is my present value? Year, particulars, amount, present value factor at the rate of 10%, PV. 1, 2, 3, right? Amount is 1 lakh. Present value factor 10%, 1 divided by 1.1 divide by 1.1 divide by 1.1. Present value. This multiply by this. This is your computation of ROU and lease liability, present value total. Right? What is the accounting entry? What is the accounting entry?
ROU asset account debit to lease liability.
Done? Okay. Shall I move to the next concept? Initial direct cost. Sir, what is meant by initial direct cost? What is meant by initial direct cost? Initial direct cost क्या होती है? Right. What is initial direct cost? Can anyone help me? Initial direct cost ये
Costs that have been incurred at the time of purchase of the asset, which would not have been incurred if he has not purchased that the asset. It can be anything. It can be a legal fees or any technical fees or any commission which have been paid by the lessor at the time of initial purchase of that asset.
Very good. But in this case, we are not purchasing the asset. In this case, we are taking the asset on a lease basis. If the lessee is incurring into an initial direct cost, for example, you are a lessee, right? You are entering into a lease agreement. So in many cases, when you are entering into a lease agreement, lessor says that I want a quote lease agreement. I want a quote lease agreement, right? So let's make the agreement in court of law. In that case, you have to pay some stamp duty, you have to pay some court fees, legal fees, lawyer fees, right? So these expenses have been incurred by the lessee. Broker charges, commission, stamp duty, legal fees, court charges. So if the lessee is paying such cost, what is these costs? These are the initial direct cost. What is the treatment of these costs? The treatment is these cost is also going to be capitalized as a ROU asset, right? But the point is, what is initial direct cost? While you have rightly said, Pooja, so initial direct cost is like a directly attributable cost. In our PPE standard, intangible asset standard, investment property standard, we have understood that any cost which is directly attributable to the acquisition of that asset, purchase of that asset, right? Had the asset not been purchased, this cost would not have been incurred. Correct? This is known as a initial direct cost or directly attributable cost. Likewise, initial direct cost is an incremental cost of obtaining a lease that would not have been incurred if the lease had not been obtained. If the lease have not been obtained, okay? अगर लीज नहीं होती तो वो कॉस्ट भी नहीं होती, वो लीज नहीं होती तो वो कॉस्ट भी नहीं होती, right? This is known as initial direct cost, right? So let's go to the Excel file again and let me write the.
Sir, this is for lessee perspective, no sir?
Initial direct cost is from the lessee perspective as well as from the lessor perspective both. अगर जैसे आप लीज अग्रीमेंट करते हो, नॉर्मली प्रैक्टिकल वर्ल्ड में क्या होता है, आई कैन टेल यू, I have entered into a lease agreement in one of my past flat. So the lessor wants that, this lease agreement is in the court of law, right? When you get a court agreement, इसको नॉर्मल बोलचाल की भाषा में पक्का एग्रीमेंट भी बोलते हैं. एक तो एग्रीमेंट होता है 100 रुपए के स्टैम्प पेपर पे, एक होता है पक्का एग्रीमेंट. So when it was a court agreement, so there was an expense of around 20,000 rupees. So lessor told that let's, share this expense 50-50. So 50% expense is borne by the lessor, 50% expense is borne by the lessee, I mean to say me, right? So what is the initial direct cost to the lessor? लेसोर के लिए 10,000 रुपए की इनिशियल डायरेक्ट कॉस्ट है और लेसी के लिए भी 10,000 रुपए की इनिशियल डायरेक्ट कॉस्ट, राइट? सो इनिशियल डायरेक्ट कॉस्ट कैन बी फ्रॉम द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ बोथ लेसोर एज वेल एज लेसी. अगर लेसी के लिए इनिशियल डायरेक्ट कॉस्ट है तो ट्रीटमेंट क्या होगा? इट विल बी एडेड टू द राइट ऑफ यूज एसेट. बट अगर लेसोर के लिए तो ट्रीटमेंट क्या होगा? लेसोर को राइट ऑफ यूज एसेट तो बनाना नहीं है.
It
Right?
will reduce the income to be recognized over the period of lease.
Yes, yes. So either he will reduce the income or what he will do, he will recognize the expense. Okay. So we will discuss this aspect when we discuss the lessor accounting. Lessor accounting is largely similar. What we have already discussed in AS 19, what we have understood in accounting standard 19 or old in AS 17. Lessor की accounting ज्यादा नहीं बदली, but lessee accounting पूरी बदल गई in AS 116 में, right? So initial direct cost, whenever a lessee will incur an initial direct cost, which is a cost directly attributable to take the asset on a lease basis, right? अगर लेसी कोई इनिशियल डायरेक्ट कॉस्ट incur करता है, that initial direct cost is going to be capitalized as a right of use asset. Initial direct cost क्या होती है? We have discussed that. Correct? Initial direct cost. Okay. So initial direct cost are those costs which are the incremental cost which would have been incurred in connection with entering into a lease agreement, like legal fees, stamp duty, court fees, etc., etc. Okay. So these are the initial direct cost. Friends, initial direct costs are those costs which are the incremental costs which would have been incurred in connection with entering into the lease contract only, like legal fees, stamp duty, court fees, etc. Okay. Right. So this we have also discussed. Now we have reached to the initial recognition and measurement. Any questions so far? I'm just taking a 30-second pause. If you have any question, any concept which you have not understood, I will repeat that concept and then I'll move to initial recognition and measurement. Please unmute and ask question. Doesn't matter English or Hindi. If any student is not comfortable in asking in English, please ask in Hindi. Ginny is saying no doubt. Hemant, do you have any doubt? Vignesh, do you have any doubt? Let me look at the portal also. Ashutosh, Rohini, do you have any doubt? Okay, so 7 students have confirmed. 10 students have confirmed. Okay, so let's discuss treatment in the books of lessee. We are discussing lessee accounting, right? Initial recognition. Initial recognition, what is meant by initial recognition? Recognition at the inception date or recognition at the commencement date?
Commencement date.
Commencement date. The accounting has to start on a commencement date. Accounting कब स्टार्ट होगी? कमेंसमेंट डेट पे स्टार्ट होगी अकाउंटिंग. ओके, कमेंसमेंट डेट. राइट ऑफ यूज एसेट एंड लीज लायबिलिटी. मुझे बताना है ये दोबारा, राइट ऑफ यूज एसेट डेबिट टू लीज लायबिलिटी. या
No, sir.
From 7:30 a.m. from the first class, I'm telling you, right of use debit to lease liability, right of use debit to lease liability. At the commencement date, lessee has to capitalize, lessee has to recognize right of use asset on the basis of present value of the lease rentals. On the basis of present value of the lease rentals. Now the question is, sir, what is included in the right of use assets? Right? What are the various components of the right of use asset? So right of use asset, debit to credit, lease liability. What is lease liability? Present value of future lease payments to the lessee using interest rate implicit in the lease. कौन सा interest rate implicit in the lease? कौन सा?
IRR of the lessor.
IRR of the lessor. If IRR of the lessor is not known, then
IBR.
IBR of whom?
Lessee.
IBR of lessee. आपको अपना तो पता ही होगा ना, दूसरे का नहीं पता, आपको अपना तो पता होगा. Right? You don't know my PAN number. Do you know your PAN number? Of course, yes. You don't know my civil rating. Do you know your civil rating? You understand what is civil rating? Your civil score. Financial institutions are looking at your civil score before granting you any loan. Correct? Yeah. So, ROU asset debit to lease liability, present value of future lease payments. Debit. Credit, lessor or supplier, if any lease payment made on or before the commencement date. So before the commencement date, the lessee has given an advance payment. The lessee has given an advance payment or a security deposit. The lessee has given an advance payment, okay, of 10,000 rupees. Before the commencement date of the lease, lessee has already given an advance payment. So when the lessee, for example, the asset has been transferred to the lessee on 1st of April and the agreement was entered on 15th of February. On 15th of February, the lessee has given an advance rent of 10,000 rupees. So what was the accounting entry of advance rent which is received by the lessor and given by the lessee? Lessee 10,000 रुपए एडवांस देके आ गया तो लेसी क्या अकाउंटिंग करेगा? पैसे दिए तो अकाउंटिंग तो करनी पड़ेगी ना.
To bank.
What is? Sorry?
Lessor account debit to bank.
Lessor account debit to bank or advance rent account debit to bank, right? So nomenclature could be anything. First of all, you all are big guys, right? You all are matured student. You are CA final student. And in CA final, you know, when you read the expertise level of CA foundation, CA intermediate and CA final. In CA foundation, basic knowledge is required. In CA inter, working knowledge is required. In CA final, expert knowledge is required. Right? So it doesn't matter if you are writing advance rent or lessor debit, it will not make any difference. Okay, so not to worry about those things. You can pass an accounting entry advance rent account debit, or you can pass an accounting entry lessor account debit to bank. Okay, so both are okay. So then you come to the commencement date, because this ROU lease liability accounting will be done only on the commencement date. अब आप commencement date पे आ गए, and on the commencement date, right, this lease agreement is for 3-year period. Okay, you have to pay 1 lakh rupees of lease rental every year. You have to pay 1 lakh rupees of lease rental every year, right? 10,000 you have already paid as advance rent. Now 90,000 you have to pay, and 1 lakh in the second year, in the third year 1 lakh rupees. So what is the accounting of ROU? क्या accounting होगी ROU की? What is the accounting of ROU? ROU का computation value क्या होगी?
So if that advance is not the portion of rent, then it will be as advance only. If it is portion of rent, I will consider 1 lakh, not 90,000.
Initial recognition and measurement. Okay. A Limited has paid an advance rent of rupees 10,000, as on 15th February 2024. The asset is given on a lease as on 1st April 2024. The annual rental is 1 lakh for a period of 1 lakh per annum. Annual rental लिखा ही है तो per annum लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है. Annual rental is 1 lakh for 3 years. Interest rate implicit in the lease is 10%. Compute ROU on the commencement date. Do you find these small examples useful to clarify your concept? What is your view?
Yes.
आपको ये
Yes,
छोटे
sir.
छोटे एग्जाम्पल्स अच्छे लगते हैं
Yes.
Yes,
for
sir.
clarifying the concept? Okay, very good. So what is my accounting entry on day 1? 15th February 2024. 15th February, 15th Feb 2024. 15th Feb. What is the accounting entry? Lessor account
Rent,
debit. एडवांस रेंट और लेसोर कुछ भी लिख सकते हैं. एडवांस रेंट भी लिख सकते हैं, लेसोर भी लिख सकते हैं. एडवांस रेंट. डेबिट टू बैंक. $10,000. Okay. Now, let's say the rental payment is at the beginning of the year. Okay. I need to compute ROU. So now I came to 1st April 2024. Okay. Computation of ROU. Computation of ROU. Year amount PVF PV. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, just a minute. What is the payment on the year 1? What is the payment on 1st April? Sorry?
90,000, sir.
90,000. Year 2, 1 lakh. Year 3, 1 lakh. What is the discount rate for this 90,000?
1 only, sir, because it is paying at the beginning of the year.
Very good. There is no time value of money. It is getting paid at the beginning of the year. Right? तो हमेशा माइंड में ये मत रखना कि आलोक सर ने तो हमेशा 1 divided by 1.1 किया है. No. In all the example, we have considered the payment at the end of the year. In this example, this rental payment is at the beginning of the year. So it is 1. Next year, 1 divided by 1.1. Next year, 1 divided by 1.1. Right? ठीक है ना? Second year beginning means first year end. Right? तो 1 साल का discount rate लगाया. So what is my total of the present value? What is my total of present value? PV total. What is the accounting entry? ROU, right of use asset account debit. डेबिट कितना होगा पता नहीं सर, अभी देखते हैं. टू लीज लाइबिलिटी, मेरी फ्यूचर की लीज लाइबिलिटी कितनी है विच आई हैव टू पे इन फ्यूचर? व्हाट इज माय प्रेजेंट वैल्यू ऑफ लीज लाइबिलिटी विच आई हैव टू पे इन फ्यूचर?
2,63,554.
263,554. This is what I have to pay in future. I have to pay a total lease liability of how much? 2,90,000 in future. And the present value of 2,90,000 is 263,554. Do you all agree with me?
Yes, sir.
So even 90,000 I can take it as bank. No, sir, I'm paying on the first beginning of
So
the
hold
year.
on, Pooja. Hold on, Anila or Nisha. So what happened? First, I'm passing. I'll pass all the entries, not to worry. Okay. So on the day one, I have not paid. I'm going to pay in the evening, and I'm passing the entry in the morning, right? So what is my lease liability at the commencement date? 2,90,000 I have to pay. And since you are right, sir, I am paying on the day one. That is why I have not discounted this payment. इसीलिए तो discount नहीं किया हमने. Okay. So my right of use asset debit to lease liability, but my lease liability is 263,554. Right. And I have already paid I have already paid 10,000 in advance. So whatever I paid in advance, I'll credit that also to what? To lessor account. To lessor account. मैंने लेसोर को डेबिट कर रखा क्योंकि उसने मेरे को एसेट ही नहीं दिया था अभी तक. जैसे ही उसने मेरे को एसेट दिया, मैंने क्या किया, उसको लेसोर को क्रेडिट कर दिया. क्रेडिट हाउ मच? 10,000 which I have already paid. What is the total? What is the total of my ROU asset? ROU asset का टोटल क्या होना चाहिए? जितना पे कर चुका हूं प्लस जितना पे करना है. जितना पे कर चुका हूं एक्चुअल प्लस जितना पे करना है उसका टाइम वैल्यू ऑफ मनी के हिसाब से प्रेजेंट वैल्यू. करेक्ट? यस नो?
Yes, sir.
सर ओके. यस सर. वेरी गुड. So this is my right of use asset. What is my next accounting entry? Lease liability account debit. On 1st of April itself, 1st April को ही मेरी एक accounting entry होगी, lease liability account debit to what? To bank account.
Bank account.
Credit. What is the amount? 10,000.
90,000.
90,000. Very good. 90,000. Any doubt? ROU asset account debit to lease liability to lessor account. Any doubt? Or no any doubt? Yes. So right of use asset is required to be recognized at the commencement date on the basis of present value of future lease rental, on the basis of whatever lease payment has been made in advance. That lease payment is that amount is also going to be credited, right? Lessor or supplier has to be credited. Less lease incentive received. If there is some lease incentive which is received, उससे क्या होगा? Your ROU asset value will go down. Your ROU asset value will go down. Okay. Initial direct cost. Now, at the commencement date of the lease, you have also entered into some stamp duty, legal fees, etc., etc. You have entered into some initial direct cost also. What is the treatment of that initial direct cost?
That has to be added.
It has to be added to ROU asset. ROU asset account debit to bank account. Right? For example, you have, like I have incurred 10,000 rupees due to registration of my lease agreement into the court. So what is the accounting entry I need to pass? ROU asset account debit to bank 10,000 means this 10,000 has to be added to the ROU asset, not to lease liability. ROU to bank 10,000. So this this initial direct cost is also required to be capitalized to ROU, right? Clear? Lease liability, future lease payment, lessor supplier, advance payment, bank creditor, initial direct cost. The last aspect, decommissioning provision, site dismantling provision, provision for decommissioning, provision for asset retirement obligation. Have you heard about this concept? मैंने कभी पढ़ाया है आपको ये concept?
Yes, in PP.
Yes, sir.
In PPE. You remember when I discussed PPE, when I explained the initial measurement of PPE, I told that PPE has to be initially measured at cost. This standard has taken lot of inference from Ind AS 16 PPE, and cost includes purchase price plus import duty plus non-refundable taxes minus trade discount and rebate plus directly attributable cost plus provision for decommissioning or dismantling. सुना सुना लग रहा है? सुना सुना लग रहा है? Is it something which is heard or is it something which is
What, sir?
heard? Okay, very good. So likewise, Likewise, in many cases, when it was PPE, the company was acquiring the asset, purchasing the asset, but it is a lease asset. And what happened? Typically, in case of telecom industry, have you seen any telecom tower? Have you seen any telecom tower? देखा है आप लोगों ने?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Either on the rooftop or on the land, you have seen the telecom tower. So these telecom companies like Indus Towers Limited, Indus Towers is a listed company. These companies are taking a space. For example, Anila has decided to rent out her rooftop for installation of a tower to the telecom company, right? Airtel, for example. Airtel came to Anila and told that, Madam, I want to install my telecom tower. She told that, okay, let's enter into an agreement for 10 years and you have to pay me so and so rental. So Airtel is lessee, Anila is lessor. So when Airtel is installing the tower, there is an agreement that after 10 years, when you have to remove this tower, you have to clear my rooftop because you are doing a lot of civil work. You are doing a lot of, modification. So whenever you will go, you will give me my rooftop in the same condition in which I am giving it to you right now. So Airtel as a lessee, Airtel has to capitalize right of use asset, right? Airtel has to credit lease liability, present value, future lease payment. If Airtel has given some advance, he will credit advance and debit ROU asset. If Airtel has incurred some expenses for registration, he has to debit ROU, credit a bank. And Airtel is also required to create a provision for dismantling obligation, site restoration obligation. Why? Because Airtel will incur these obligations after 10 years. So the present value of these obligation, whatever it will be there, it is debited to ROU and credited to the provision for dismantling obligation, right? Because this cost is not getting incurred right now. So ROU will be debited and provision needs to be credited, right? Is that clear? Clear or clear?
Clear in mind, sir.
Clear in mind? Okay. So friends, let's discuss some questions. Then we'll go to the exception part also. Yes. Entity L enters into a lease for 10 years. So before this, let me discuss another question. Yes, this question. Illustration number 28, measuring a right of use asset. Entity Y and entity Z execute a 12-year lease of a rail car with the following terms on 1st January 2016. Lease commencement date. Lease commencement date is 1st February 2016. Okay. So lease agreement is 12 year and commencement date is 1st January. Sorry, commencement date is 1st February. Okay. The agreement was executed on 1st January. Inception date is 1st January. Entity Y must pay entity Z the first monthly rental payment of 10,000 upon execution of lease. कब पे किया है?
Beginning of the lease.
Beginning of the lease नहीं. 10,000 तो pay किया inception of the lease पे.
Advance,
10,000 has
advance.
been paid as an advance rate on the inception of the lease. Okay. On the inception of the lease means advance rent. And the entity will pay entity Y 50,000 cash incentive to enter into the lease payable upon lease execution. Lessor will pay 50,000 incentive to the lessee on the execution of the lease. On the execution of the lease. What does it mean? Lease क्या है? ये incentive है. This is your lease incentive, right? This is lease incentive. Okay. क्या करेंगे lease incentive का?
Reduce from ROU.
Reduce from ROU. Entity Y incurred 1,000 of initial direct cost. Lessee is also incurring some initial direct cost, which are payable on 1st February 2016. Okay. Entity Y calculated the initial lease liability as the present value of the lease payment, discounted using its incremental borrowing rate because interest rate implicit in the lease was not determined. The initial lease liability is 8,50,000. and the future lease payment, whatever is there over a period of 12 years, this entity Y has computed the present value, and the present value of this future lease liability is 8,50,000. Tell me, how would the lessee company measure and record this lease? Tell me, what is the ROU?
So the present value of this lease liability have been given to that. We will add 10,000 and we will reduce the incentive amount, and we will also add the direct cost amount.
Also at the
Direct cost amount.
very good. So this 10,000 will be added. This 1,000 will be added. 8,50,000 will be added. 50,000 will be deducted. So what is my ROU asset? My initial lease liability credit 850. Okay. Lessor credit 10,000. Lease incentive received 50,000. It will be debited 50,000. Lessor will be debited, or bank will be debited 50,000. Right. Initial direct cost 1,000. Okay. So technically you have to pay less. So your ROU will be credited to that extent, or it will be deducted to that extent. Your lease liability will be deducted to that extent. Right. Initial measurement of ROU is 8,11,000. Right? Any doubt? Clear है ना ये?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Why 10,000 is taken into the calculation, sir?
Why 10,000 is taken into the
Calculation. Initial ROA calculation.
Have you
Question.
heard this or have you attended? Have you listened this example when I was taking this example of advance rent? Were you there?
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Is it mentioned advanced rent, sir?
So it is mentioned in the question. If you see, you are Stephen, right?
Vignesh, sir.
Vignesh. So Vignesh, if you see in this question, that is why it is important to read the question very carefully. Entity Y and entity Z execute a 12-year lease agreement with the following terms on 1st January. So what is this 1st January? Is it an inception date or commencement date?
Inception date, sir.
Inception date. Commencement date is after 1 month, which is 1st February. The accounting has to start on a commencement date. The asset is transferred on a commencement date. Means whatever amount which has been paid before commencement date is considered as advance payment. आपको asset तो मिला नहीं. You haven't received the asset, but you have paid the money to the lessor. So what accounting entry you will pass as a first entry? Lessor account debit to bank account.
Okay.
But now when you got the asset, now you have to pay the less rent.
Okay, sir. Okay, got
Let's say the rent is, for example, 1 lakh, you have to pay 90,000. You have already paid 10,000. Right? So this 10,000, you will credit the lessor and debit the ROU.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. So let's discuss another question. Just wait for a moment. So let me cover one example. With this example, you will get enough clarity. Are you able to see my Excel file?
No, sir.
No?
No, sir.
Okay. Yes. Now, are you able to see my Excel file?
Yes, sir.
A Limited has taken a leasehold office from B Limited on 1st April 2023 for a period of 5 years. A Limited has paid an advance rent of rupees 10,000, right? Before 1st April 2000. Oh, just a minute. Before 1st April 2023. B Limited has given a lease incentive of rupees 25,000 at the time of entry of A Limited in the office space. Right? On the commencement date, some lease incentive is also given by the lessor to the lessee. The remaining rent A Limited will pay as follows after 1st April 2023. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Okay. A Limited has also paid rupees 20,000 for lease registration in the court of law. The company has done some leasehold improvement in the lease premises, which lessor has told to the lessee that at the end of the lease term, he will be requiring the office in the same condition in which it was given to the lessee. The lessee is expecting the restoration and dismantling cost of rupees 50,000 at the end of the lease term. The incremental borrowing rate of A Limited is 10%. You are requested to provide the accounting entries in the books of the lessee as on 1st April 2023. Right? Are you liking this question? A lot of information is given in this question.
So why leasehold improvement amount is not given, sir? We have to add that for initial measurement. No?
Why?
Sir, if he is having the cost for dismantling, he will also add the initial cost of that improvement. No?
Yes, it is also required to be added as a right of use asset. Okay, why it is not given? So let me put that also. Not to worry, I can put that also. So the company has done leasehold improvement for rupees 1 lakh. Right? Normally what happens, Anila, the leasehold improvement is like a PPE, right? You have to capitalize leasehold improvement separately, right? But this restoration is like, since you have taken that premises on a lease basis, so you have to dismantle this entire leasehold improvement, and that is having a cost. Okay. So the reason for not having this leasehold improvement amount was leasehold improvement is like a PP which has to be capitalized separately. Okay. But उसका जो restoration होता है ना, लीज प्रीमाइस को खाली करना है, इसीलिए जो डिसमेंटलिंग ऑब्लिगेशन होती है, रिस्टोरेशन ऑब्लिगेशन होती है, उसको हम क्या करते हैं, कैपिटलाइज करते हैं. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Got it, sir.
But on your request, I have also captured that. So let's solve this
but
question.
Here, sir, when you say that, sir, if the question gives that, we have to capitalize here, or I should take it as PPE?
Separate. Leasehold improvement to bank separately.
Okay.
Not as a part of right of use asset. Okay. Now solve this question. On the commencement date, right of use asset needs to be recognized. Okay. On the commencement date, you have to recognize right of use asset. Right? करना है ना हमें. Right of use asset will include the following. What it will include? It will include the following. What is included? What is included in right of use asset? Present value of future lease payment plus any lease payment before commencement date minus any lease incentive plus initial direct cost plus provision for asset retirement obligation. यही करना हमें ऐड. What is my present value of future lease payment? What is my present value of future lease payment? क्या होगी? I need to compute. Shall I write XXX? Any lease incentive received by the lessee. What is the lease incentive received by the lessee? क्या दिया है क्वेश्चन में? कुछ दिया है?
25,000.
B Limited has given a lease incentive of rupees 25,000. Okay, 25,000 minus 25,000.
So that XXX is 10,000, no, sir?
Initial direct cost, whether initial direct cost is given in the question. It is how much? 20,000. 20,000 initial direct cost. Okay, sorry. Your present value of future lease payment we need to compute. Lease payment made on or before the commencement date is 10,000. It is given in the question, right?
Yes, sir.
Initial direct cost is 20,000 again, which is given in the question. It has to be added. Provision for asset retirement obligation. Is it given 50, in the question? 50,000.
So we will take present value.
Yes. This payment I have to make after 5 years. At the end of the lease term, after 5 years. And the value of the estimated value of the provision is 50,000 after 5 years. So I need to compute the present value. Provision for asset retirement obligation at present value. So I need to compute the present value. And what is my ROU? ROU is total of these 5 items. क्या करूं? Let's compute the present value of future lease payment. Should I compute present value of future lease payment? Present value of future lease payments. These lease payments, in this question, it is given that these lease payments are at the year end. ये कब दिए? Year end पे दिए. तो क्या करूं?
First year से discounting start होंगी.
So discounting will start from the first year. 1 divided by 1.1, divide by 1.1, divide by 1.1. Okay. What is my present value? This multiply by this. Okay. अभी तक कोई चैलेंज तो नहीं है ना क्वेश्चन समझने में? मैं जो भी कर रहा हूं आपको समझ आ रहा है ना?
Yes, sir.
सबको आ रहा है ना? $369,988 total. So I got one value, present value of future lease payment. Shall I remove this x with 369,988? एक value और मिल गई. Now what is the fill in the blank? What is fill in the blank now?
50,000 into
50,000. 50,000. So this 50,000 present value of provision for asset retirement obligation. Present value of the provision for asset retirement obligation. What is when this provision will incur? Year end? 50 year. What is the amount? 50,000.
50,000.
What is my present value factor at the rate of 10% at the end of 50th year?
0.621.
0.621.
0.621. Very good. So don't make it 1 divided by 1.1. It is not first year, it is 5th year. तो 5th year का discount factor लेना पड़ेगा. 31,046. We got the present value of asset retirement obligation also. Now, what is my ROU total? Equal to sum of all these numbers. This is my ROU. 406,034 is my ROU. What is my, now let me make all the accounting entries. Accounting entry for advance rent paid before the commencement date. What is the accounting entry? Lessor account debit to bank account. बहुत सिंपल है. आप लोग तो चैंपियन हो अकाउंटिंग एंट्रीज में. चैंपियन हो या नहीं हो? Yes or no?
With your Krupa, sir.
Yes, you are champion. Of course, yes.
Yes, sir.
You are learning these accounting entries since class 11, right? Since your childhood days. Okay. Now, accounting entry as on 1st April 2023. Accounting entry as on 1st April 2023. क्या accounting entry होगी?
ROU asset account debit.
Right of use asset. ROU asset account debit. Debit. Debit to what? Lease liability.
To lesser.
To lease liability. To what?
Lesser
To
10,000.
lessor, which is advance rent. तो lessor account को credit भी करेंगे, lease liability को credit करेंगे, lessor को credit करेंगे, और क्या credit करेंगे?
Bank.
Initial direct cost to bank. किससे करेंगे? Initial direct cost से करेंगे credit. और क्या credit करेंगे? To provision for asset retirement obligation. To provision for asset retirement obligation, right? Credit. इन सब की वैल्यू क्या है? इन सब की वैल्यू क्या है? Present value of lease liability 369,988. To lessor account 10,000. To bank account initial direct cost 20,000. To 31,046. What is the total? What is the sum of these all numbers? Sum. 431,034. सही है?
Reduce the 25,000, sir.
Reduce the 25,000 also. Okay. So what is the accounting entry for reducing? I'm also getting a money. I'm also getting a money. Bank account debit. Bank account debit. To what? To
ROU asset.
ROU asset account. Credit. ये कौन सा मनी मिला है? ये कौन सा पैसा मिला है? बैंक अकाउंट डेबिट कौन सा हुआ है? लीज इंसेंटिव. Okay. So this is your account. I believe with the help of these accounting entries, calculation, now everything is crystal clear to all of you. Yes or no? So 369 present value future lease payment, 10,000 lease payment made on or before commencement date, 20,000 initial direct cost, provision for ARO lease incentive received from the lessor. Net, what is your ROU net? 431 minus 25, 406 is your ROU. So please see this comprehensive illustration. If I can guarantee you, if you will go through the illustration, the concept explanation in the Excel file while revising or while understanding the standards, if you see these examples from the Excel file, I can guarantee you, your concepts will get crystal clear. I can guarantee you. Yes. So who's there? Because I'm not able to hear properly.
Hello. Sir, am I audible?
Nisha, you're not audible.
Sir, I'm sorry, am I audible?
You're not audible. So can you write your query on the chat box? So friends, we have covered this part also. Quickly, let's discuss illustration number 27. Initial measurement of lease liability. Entity L enters into a lease for 10 years with a single lease payment payable at the beginning of each year. यहाँ लिखा है beginning of each year. What kind of alarm? What kind of
Discounting
alarm
from second year.
should trigger in your mind? Discounting from second year. Very good. First year discounting will not happen. Very good. Lease term is 10 years. Single lease payment payable at the beginning of each year. मतलब yearly payment. Okay. Initial lease payment is 1 lakh. Lease payment will increase by the rate of LIBOR each year. By the rate of LIBOR each year. LIBOR means इंडेक्स रेट है, लंडन इंटरबैंक ऑफर रेट. जैसे हमारे यहाँ होता है ना आपका MCLR होता है, राइट, बैंकों के केस में RBI का लेंडिंग रेट होता है, प्राइमरी लेंडिंग रेट, वैसे लाइबोर होता है. ओके. सो दिस लीज पेमेंट एस्केलेशन is on the basis of index or a rate, variable lease payment index or a rate. At the date of commencement of the lease, LIBOR is 2%. Assume that the interest rate implicit in the lease is 5%. How lease liability is initially measured? In this question, fixed lease payment is 1 lakh. Fixed lease payment is 1 lakh. Okay. And fixed lease payment is 1 lakh. And the escalation is 2%. Means this 1 lakh will be increased by 2% every year. Like in the first year, this 1 lakh will become 1,02,000 in the second year, 1,04,046 to 121. So it will increase 2% every year. It will increase 2% every year. It will increase 2% every year. Okay. Right. So 1 lakh is my fixed payment and this 2,000, 4,040 is my variable lease payment on the basis of index or rate, which will become in substance fixed payment. Okay. My IRR is 5%. My interest rate is 5%. Okay. Compute the lease liability. How can I compute the lease liability? If I have computed the lease payment, I need to apply the discount factor. 1 for the first payment, it is 1. Why? Because it is advance payment. For the next payment, 1 divided by 1.05, 1.05, 1.05. This is how you will compute your present value of lease payments, right? This is how you will compute your present value of lease payments. Is that okay, friends? Is that okay? Any question? So there is one question which is from Sanya. Sanya is saying, sir, we are taking present value of future payments, but we will be paying at full value. So what will happen to the difference in amount? Sanya, are you talking about the lease liability? For example, let me go back to the Excel file and let me show you what happens to the difference between full value and the present value. The difference between full value and present value, it will go to the interest cost. It will go to the interest cost. Okay. So let me, in this example only, let me give you the liability schedule also. Lease liability schedule. Lease liability schedule. Okay. What is my lease liability schedule? Year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Opening liability. Interest cost at the rate of 10%. Payments. Closing liability. Right. This is an advance payment case. So let me take payment first and interest afterward. What is my opening liability in this case? My opening liability is 369,988. Okay. 369,988. What is the payment I have made in the beginning? What is the payment I have made? 90,000. I have paid 90,000 upfront. 90,000. What is my interest cost?
0.
0. Day 1 पे तो 0 ही होगी ना. Closing liability, sum of these number. Opening liability. Now, in the second year, my day 1, what is my day 1 liability? My day 1 liability is 27,988. Okay. I will make a payment. Now I will make a payment. So I will make a payment in the beginning of the second year. So मेरे को इंटरेस्ट तो 27,988 पे पूरा पे करना पड़ेगा ना? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
वो तो मुझे पूरा पे करना पड़ेगा. ये एडवांस पेमेंट का क्वेश्चन है, इसलिए इसमें ऐसा हो रहा है. इनटू में 10%. एंड हाउ मच पेमेंट आई हैव टू मेक?
1 lakh.
1 lakh.
What is my closing liability? This much. Now, in the beginning of third year, what is my closing liability at the end of the second year? मेरी क्लोजिंग लाइबिलिटी में क्या होगा? एक तो ये नंबर होगा, इसके अलावा इंटरेस्ट भी इस पे चार्ज करना पड़ेगा मुझे. Into 10% interest. What is the payment I need to make?
1 lakh.
1 lakh. What is my closing liability? This one. Again, this is my opening liability. This is my interest cost. This is my payment I need to make. Okay, this is my closing. Again, this one. And this is what it is there. I have to pay this. And this is 54. I think there is some issue in this question.
Sir, discounting one first year से भी हुआ है ना, तो interest cost will be there in first year also.
Okay, yes. So sorry. I have just solved this question considering advance payment, while this question is the payment is happening at the year end. My mistake. Okay. Thank you so much for clarifying my mistake. आपको समझ आया मैंने क्या गलती की थी? मैंने इस पेमेंट को एडवांस पेमेंट मान लिया था और मैं ऊपर से कंप्यूट कर रहा था, तो वो मैच नहीं होगा ऑफ कोर्स. तो मेरी ओपनिंग लाइबिलिटी ये है, मैं ईयर एंड में पेमेंट कर रहा हूं, राइट? आई एम पेइंग एट द ईयर एंड, नॉट इन द बिगिनिंग. ये ईयर एंड की पेमेंट है, राइट? So what is my interest cost? My interest cost will be 10%. My payment will be how much? 90,000 in the first year. What is my closing liability? This one is my closing liability. This will become opening. I will apply interest on this amount. And this is my closing liability. Same way I'll apply interest. This is my third year payment. This is my closing liability. Same way I will apply, I will apply interest. This is my payment. This is my closing liability. Same way I'll apply interest. This is my payment. This is my closing liability, 0. So Sanya, you can see what is my total payment? My total payment is 4,90,000. What is my present value of this lease liability? 369,988. So what is the difference between these two amounts? What is the difference? The difference is 1,20,012. This is the difference, Sanya. This will go to interest cost, 1,20,012. So every year interest will be debited in the P&L and lease liability will be credited, right? So lease liability will be increased and it will be decreased by the payments. Okay. I hope it is crystal clear to everyone, my dear friends. I hope it is crystal clear to everyone. Yes?
Yes, sir. Yes,
We
sir.
call that the lease amortization.
It is known as a lease amortization. Very good. You guys are wonderful students, I must say. Very knowledgeable students. Yes. Friends, after this, let me conclude today's session. If you have any question, I would be happy to answer. If you don't have the question, then I would be happy to conclude this session. Let me know if you have any question. Any question? No question. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Take care. Mr. Ayash, session is over.
आया जी।